Welcome to the WTF Forum. The hosts do not give financial, legal, medical or any kind of advice. Opinions are their own. This broadcast contains foul language and dangerous ideas. If you need a trigger warning, you are in the wrong place. Now enjoy the show.
Dear partners and friends of
What the fuck?
Forum, a very cordial welcome.
The WTF Forum is a decentralized broadcast network with no governing body of any kind, and is produced and distributed by a loosely affiliated, ever-growing network of rogue, independent content creators. This forum does not, will not, and shall not have any one location, feed, platform, or channel, but shall be shared and multiplied as nature dictates. If any listener of the following proceedings finds themselves offended, they will be asked kindly to go fuck themselves. All right, what the fuck's up, y'all? Welcome to the WTF Forum. As always, I am Mike the Polymath, Easy Peasy Podcast, and we're going to go around the circle here and introduce everybody else. I will pass it to Ashley.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me once again. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I am Ashley Think Changer Pete at Union of the Unknowns podcast, here with my castmate Stella, and I'll send it over to Ando.
Ando, Burn, Babylon Burn, and the Doom Kitchen. You can find me on the catchers under Burn, Babylon Burn, or libertylinks.io/the Doom Kitchen, or the Doom Kitchen at protonmail.com. What's going on, Stella?
Ooh, well, what Ashley said, and always good to be here with you guys. And you can also find me occasionally on the Propaganda Report with Brad Binkley about once a month, and sometimes with Drew Misson. Over to you, Drew.
Thanks, Stella. Drew Misson from You're Missing the Point podcast and Conspiracy Theatre 3000. Yeah, try and find me. I'm heavily shadow banned and search suggestion blocked, so good luck.
Right on. Well, it's good to see all you beautiful people back once more. It sounds like Phytophiliac will be joining us shortly, and we may see one or two more. We'll see. I thought since we've got good representation from the Aussie state, if you will, maybe we'd start with something I saw from Australia. At least I think this is from Australia. Hang on just a moment for me. This one, it's been making the rounds for a minute, so you may or may not have seen it, but this to me just summarizes the craziness that we're seeing in a lot of places, including Australia and the United States. This could easily happen on the streets of San Francisco.
Do you know what you're doing here with your engine idling?
No, what?
You are polluting the atmosphere.
Really?
You're just sitting here without a care of the world, with your engine running,
Okay.
and you don't care who you're polluting.
Okay.
Fumes from this car are going in through all the windows and all the ventilation.
The fumes from this car, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know that this car's electric, right?
Ha ha ha. Yeah. You try and fob me off like that.
No,
It's an
I'm not fobbing
electric
anyone off.
car, la-di-da-di-da, just to cover up your crimes. Because I
What
will be
crimes?
reporting this, you know. I've got
What?
your number
Report me to
plate.
who?
To the authorities.
What? And say what? Hey, excuse me, someone's in their car.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a picture of you and all. You're polluting the atmosphere. That is a crime now.
How is it a crime?
Because you are sending untold, nasty emissions of poison all over this area.
So this guy, he's in a Tesla. He keeps flashing his camera to the steering wheel where you can see the Tesla logo. And I'm just saying this shit. Yeah, I lost it. I thought that was so damn funny. I mean, talk about a Karen, right?
I'm really glad she wasn't an Australian because she sounds
Was she
British
not?
or something, doesn't she?
Yeah, it's a UK.
Okay, I got a terrible ear for accents. I apologize.
It might have been in Australia, but a UK person telling an Australian off, perhaps. I don't know.
If it was, it'd have to be South Australia. Their accent sounds a bit more British than ours.
Well, so much for making the Australian connection, but who cares?
Yeah, whatever.
It's all the same bullshit, man. Like, I just know that, like, it seems like, I guess, yeah, the UK, Australia, the US, obviously, like Canada, this woke stuff, this crazy, like the greenie madness. I'm a diehard environmentalist, but I would never do this.
That's a bit
like
extreme.
it's like, lady, mind your own fucking business. I'm not advocating the physical assault of women, but if we look at this just objectively, she's kind of asking for it.
Well, this is a country that has a capital city where they have emissions zones where you have to pay like £12 to drive your car in there.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell this is scripted.
Are you sure? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like the person that was running the generator to power their electric car. There's a bunch of these. This is just that you can tell it's scripted. It's like they're not very good actors.
I mean, you could be right, but I found her kind of convincing. She seemed like a genuine bitch, but
She played the part very well, didn't she?
yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I could just see her in the future if she was real. I can see her in the future, and there are plenty of people like that, even if she's an actor, But she'll do really well with the Chinese, dobby credit score thing, won't she?
The irony with all that is the Tesla's probably the worst car for the environment, because you could actually go up to these drivers and go, do you know how much lithium was mined in Africa to get your car?
Actually, that would be a reasonable, chastising. Be like, you think you're so green. Do you realize how many slave children went into mining this shit? And how, yeah, I mean, the rare earth minerals, the amount of quote unquote carbon, credits that is worth.
It'd make their Black Lives Matter sticker on their bumper redundant, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, because lithium is the largest source of lithium is Australia. So somebody has suffered, whether it's slave children or Indigenous, somebody has suffered. And then they go and plug them in to recharge them anyway. It's ridiculous.
Well, Stella, I was saying before you joined us, in the green room, I was saying how I just was listening to you and Drew talking about this stuff going on in Australia with the Indigenous. Mm-hmm. And I said it kind of feels similar to the whole push for reparations here in the States. I'd be curious if either of you or both of you would care to comment. I thought it was a really good episode. I listened to it this afternoon, and I guess I don't know a lot of details about this law that is apparently being debated. But why don't you tell us what's what?
Drew, I reckon you should take this one.
No worries. So Australia is voting on a referendum for whether Indigenous Australians, Aboriginals, should be recognised in our constitution, which is a bit funny because they're already Australian citizens today. Technically, they already are. But what the left in this country is pushing for is recognition via race, which opens up a Pandora's box of, like you said, reparations, treaties, payments, land taxes. But ultimately, when you look under the 26 pages of documentation that's involved with it, essentially it's just a UN green spaces agenda as a part of Agenda 2030 as a land grab. And unfortunately, they're using the Indigenous people as a bit of a patsy for this to get a hold of what they want to.
Yeah, and there's quite a few who have definitely paid off and got some very shady backgrounds and frauds as well, who aren't even really Indigenous at all, or very, very small amounts, just claiming that they're fully Indigenous. And so, yeah, there's a lot of shifty stuff going on, and a small handful of them will definitely profit, but there's going to be a stack of them who won't, and they'll probably just be thrown aside once the objective has been filled. But yeah, it's very divisive, very divisive. So yes, very similar to the reparation thing that's going on over in your neck of the woods.
Well,
Can I?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in with a quick question, because the other thought that I had is that it sounds like the land grab aspect of Agenda 2030 as well. And Stella and I were talking, or at least they could lead to the potential of that. And Stella and I were talking about this because I was, and not to get too far ahead of us, but because of what happened in Hawaii, I said, I am very surprised because I thought it was going to be Australia first.
Well, we've had we have sort of been fairly burned.
I know
there's a bit to go,
but I mean from the land takeover perspective, or what appears to be happening in Maui. I think that I was just surprised that it wasn't Australia first because of how strict and how hard it was there during the lockdowns.
Yep. Well, that's actually happening in my area. In fact, I'm just going to read out the Nimbin Good Times, the very front page, which is the most recent edition of the Nimbin Good Times. And you do have good times in Nimbin. But I digress. So the title is Glimmer of Hope on Buybacks. So that sort of basically says it all, probably. This is after the floods. We had some very heavy floods, for anyone who might not know. End of February, beginning of March 2022. And devastating. Thousands of people displaced. The town is still suffering. That's only half the shops have come back. Basically, it's taken quite a long time to get any help. There wasn't much help at the actual time, but now it just looks like, they're swooping in like heroes, and they're going to do the offer everyone their money that's been suffering for the last year or so. So, it's all happening over here.
It's multifaceted. We're starting to see these global disasters of nature happening, which they're going to push on climate change. So we've got these natural disasters, air quote, taking out populated areas, which are going to force people into cities. But at the same time, you've got what's happening with Australia with native title and land potentially being given back to Indigenous people. At that point, if they become sovereign nations, they have the ability to kick anyone who's not Indigenous out. So it's that extra layer of control, which is going to force people into these 15-minute cities and 20-minute neighborhoods that I don't think people really quite understand the scope and severity of what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
So do you think that would allow the Indigenous, let's say that they were not working with like the parasite class, the World Economic Forum, whatever you want to say, would that allow them to actually stand up to the globalist?
I wouldn't think so. COVID was a prime example of that. There was remote Indigenous communities in the Northern Territory that didn't want any part of the COVID vaccination program. They sent the army and they forcibly injected them.
I remember seeing those videos. It was
so it's going to be a case of these lands that are going to become sovereign Indigenous nations again. But if the government or a corporation wants something that's in there, they're either going to buy out the elders and get them to sell off their own people, or the military or military contractors will just step in.
Okay, so it doesn't matter for them.
Yeah, and as Australians on the outside of those nations, we'd be looking and not able to do a thing about it because it'd be a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm. Dark.
Yep, summed up very well.
Well, we've got another host in the house. Welcome to Rob from Black Labs. What's happening, man?
Hey, folks. How y'all doing?
Hey,
Doing
Rob.
good.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you, Drew. It's been a while. We keep missing each other on this joint.
I know this is the first time we've actually met face to face. Good to meet you.
Yeah. Good seeing you, man.
Well, you probably picked up on it, Rob. We're kind of talking about what's going on in Australia. They're talking about giving what was it, like the national parks and beaches to the Indigenous. Now, I had a guy make this argument to me a while back. He's like, we should give all the public lands back to the natives. And my first question was just like, what natives? Like native to win, and prove it also. Like, I mean, just the logistical questions associated with this proposal boggle the mind. Like, what percentage do you have to be? 10%? 100%? I mean, where do we draw a line, right? Like, and to me, it's just an absurd proposition, and it's a recipe for basically pitting people against each other, right? Like stoking racial hatred, because how come they get something and I don't, you know?
And it's going to create grifters as well. Like in Australia, there's already a lot of people that identify as Indigenous but don't have any actual racial ancestry of being an Aboriginal. But if these things come in, like in my state, they're looking at banning duck shooting. If that ever happens, I'm going to have to identify as Indigenous just so I can keep duck shooting. Like it's going to create a system where people rip off the system.
They're very loose about who can claim Indigenous origin in Australia, so it almost is meaningless at this point.
Absolutely,
Silly.
yeah.
It really is silly. You know,
I
what's
think
funny is with my background genetically, I could probably claim that I'm Indigenous Australian, because they said there's like a pan-Asian sphere of people who can claim that genetically they're indigenous to Australia.
Well, that's the funny thing. They're talking about the haplogroup that the Indigenous Australians derive from, and through the Human Genome Project, it proves Indigenous Australians actually come from the subcontinent of India. So at what point does India claim Australia as a part of theirs? There's enough
Hitler
in here
should claim
anyway.
Australia.
Yeah.
It's Aryan. Aryans.
Well, this is my point with reparations too. I'm like, how far back can we go? Like, there were plenty of white slaves.
Yeah, exactly. And
I mean,
you know, I've got Irish ancestry, so does that mean I can go and claim some land in Ireland sometime in the future?
Why not?
That'll
take
be
your
awesome.
Reparations from the, you know, the crown. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, while we're on the topic of reparations, I want to know. I actually got trolled by Dennis. If y'all know who Dennis is online, Twitter, the angel that we don't deserve. But he was posing as Maj Touré, right? And Maj Touré is what? Conservatarian? What is he? I don't know. But because he talks about reparations all the time, and I don't have an argument against it necessarily, except for I heard maybe Walter Block on an episode with Sal Mayweather a long time ago. And Walter's like, maybe if you could go back and prove every, you know, like the fact that your family was enslaved, and that the person who is their descendant has benefited from that, or, you know, something like that. But what could the case possibly be in a libertarian world for reparations? Is there any at all?
Well, then you got to talk about whether it's reparations for people from slavery or reparations for First Nations people who've had their land, air quotes, stolen. Because then you have to look at like the modern Western idea of what contracts and lands are. Indigenous people didn't hold maps. They didn't have border lines. They just belonged to the land. In their own vocab, they say that we belong to the land. It doesn't belong to us. So how can you pay someone for land or put out imaginary borders, which there's no actual historical reference for beyond their word for it? They may have only stuck to one tiny little valley, but they'll claim an entire state area. So it becomes really a really grey area in the legalities of it, because I think you could question it and push it very hard in court as to how far they want to go with it.
Yeah. I had one guy be like, you know, they promised all the freed slaves, what was it, like 8 acres and a mule?
They did
40.
40
in
acres.
general.
Yeah.
A general wanted to make them do stuff, so he made this promise, but the general has absolutely no authority, and this is one of those ridiculous myths that that's prevailed for ages, and they'll never give up on this one. But it was just a general. It wasn't Lincoln. It wasn't anybody that had the authority to say anything.
Well, like, so to me, the Homesteading Act was kind of fair in that you had to like stake your claim and, you know, improve the land, quote unquote. And it was a way for people who were poor to gain status in this country. I've argued before that I could almost make the case that public land management is misguided to begin with, and we should reinvigorate the Homestead Act and occupy the national forests and the BLM and the, you know, anywhere that somebody can strike out and make a living. You know, nowadays we have the benefit Whereas it used to be very hard to scratch a living out of certain types of ecosystems. Now people could move out to the desert, occupy a patch of land, and work remotely. And overall, I argue that if people actually tried to improve the land via permaculture, we could green up a lot of the deserts and we could improve the soils. And what we have now is not what we could have, right? We could have food forests instead of like kind of sterilized forests. You know.
Yeah, and
Anyways.
don't forget we've got geoengineering to assist us. Make it rain in the desert.
It's interesting that the Americans never really took on the Back to Africa movement, which the British did. Once the British ended their slavery, they sent all their slaves back to North Africa and they started a colony. And that country to this day is the most well-off African nation. So
we try.
If you want the homesteading movement to really take up, well, maybe a whole heap of African Americans that want reparations could go back to Africa with their advanced education, their money that they have, and make something of certain parts of Africa.
What
you
country
get canceled
is that?
for saying that here, for suggesting that here. If you tell someone go back to your country, shit hits the fan.
What
Go
country
back
in
to
Africa?
your land, not your country, your land. I mean, that's
I think
not
it
offensive.
It was the country that the United States bombed into oblivion and now has open air slave markets. Libya.
Sudan or Libya.
That's right.
Well, what about Liberia? If I recall, Liberia was the brainchild of Abraham Lincoln, right?
There was a guy, Marcus Garvey, who was a black nationalist, and he led a back to Liberia movement, and it didn't work out. I think most of the people that went came back.
Well, there's that.
Well, this is why I just think it's an absurd question to even consider. Like, anytime you say one group is being favored in some way, like it's a recipe for envy, first and foremost. The thing about the Homesteading Act was it was kind of equal opportunity. Now, I'm sure there were plenty of examples of people being discriminated against in the process, but I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem fair. I was going to share this. We were kind of touching on Hawaii earlier, and we're going to get there shortly. But I've got something here for just like the, how do you say, like the totally unequal treatment of different groups of people in kind of an inverted and super perverted kind of way.
Am I legally allowed to have my penis out today? Do whatever you want. Okay, so that's not against the law?
It's not against the law as long as you're not masturbating and you're not fully erect and it's not for sexual gratification.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Through love, serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another.
Hey, what are you doing?
What is the problem?
You can give any warning. Just wrap them up.
All right, so that's basically it. So if you couldn't hear what was going on, first guy basically is like, hey, it was a Pride Day. I don't think these two things happened in the same place per se, except the United States, just based on accents. But they're like, yeah, you can have your dick out as long as you're not, gratifying yourself. As long as you're not hard, you can expose your penis. But then, the next scene is somebody preaching, quoting the Bible and having their equipment seized, and basically they're arrested from practicing their speech, right? So I don't know, man. It's just like this preferential treatment is going to piss people off.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
To create division and war between the people. So we're not warring with them.
Exactly.
So there's
sorry, Andy.
an essay by Herbert Marcuse called Repressive Tolerance, and Pete and Aaron from Timeline Earth did a really great episode on that. You should check that out. It's really important to understand how, right-wing anything, whether it be, that or religious, will be not tolerated by the state. But yeah, they're going to open up all the doors to seeing people's penises and, disgusting trans stuff and everything like that. Anything that pushes the agenda further left, pushes the Overton window left, is going to be reported. Anything right is going to be punished, even the things that are right that used to be left. So that's another matter as well.
Well, there's no right anymore, is there? There's only the far right. You can't find the average conservative anymore. They have to be extremists. They can't be anything else. It's a really good playbook that they're using. They're pushing that the whitey, the conservative white guy, is the world's biggest enemy and the world's biggest bad guy, to the point where it pisses people off to where they do bad things, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they've created, and they can then say, look, we told you they were bad. Look what they're doing.
Yeah, well said. And I'm just amazed that some of these cops can actually go along with this. So what's happened to the police? So have they completely... Are these police for all this stuff? They must be. I mean, they've replaced... I guess the good ones have left, have they? I mean, I just can't believe it.
They have their orders, and it's like that, and they are order followers. And
just following orders, yeah. Okay.
But the blue line idiots need to understand is that they'll follow the orders, and whenever you're in a liberal hellhole, they're gonna say, hey, let all of these guys pull their wings out, do whatever, ridiculous gayness that they can do on the streets, and beat the living hell out of the Christians. That's their orders, and they'll do it
for your health and safety and national security,
and for your pleasure, or whatever.
Well,
their pleasure.
If you have the monkeypox vaccine, I think you'll be fine around Pride Month, wouldn't you? You get it all boosted up.
Oh, you can't say monkeypox anymore because it resembles a particular, demographic or something.
Careful.
Yeah, little kids and
Hey,
dogs,
they were the ones
right?
who complained, not me. No, I didn't complain. They did.
Yeah, monkeypox went away as soon as little kids and dogs started getting it.
Yeah, because everybody knows how you get monkeypox. How about that?
I love how they pushed it. It wasn't a illness that only affects gay men. It was men who sleep with other men. They didn't actively use the word gay because that would be like targeting.
Yeah,
because
super weird.
sleeping is the important part. Sleeping is that's how you get it. Don't go to sleep.
It's
do all the
download. So the people on the download, they are people who sleep with other men, but they're not gay. Gotta understand that.
You mean the chest feeders?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't want to exclude, trannies or what do they call them, non-binaries or what have you, right?
Don't want to exclude the bonus hose either. Bonus hose,
man.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for including them.
Language is being assaulted. That's all I can say.
Newspeak.
Yeah. Did y'all see this?
And hate speech. Stella would know that our country has hate speech laws, and we only have an implied freedom of speech. So we're looking for really good times in the future.
Yep, and be careful waving for a taxi because we could get arrested.
You could actually Zeke hail a taxi rather than Zeke hail a taxi.
Exactly.
It's really hard because I can't go to my Roman Renaissance fairs and say hello to my fellow Romans anymore. So there's some legalities around that are a bit hard.
Very non-inclusive.
Sleeping with men, individuals, lend me your ears and your butthole.
Oh, I just wonder if in the monkey community, if there's human pox that they're all freaking out about.
There probably is. Sure, they're sad about it.
Well, I guarantee it goes both ways. You know,
It's called democrasis.
Is that a bonus monkey? Is that a bonus
Bonus
monkey, or
monkey.
you just happy to see me?
hey, anything goes, man. Anything goes.
Furry chest feeders.
Indeed.
Oh man.
So I don't know. This popped up on my timeline where I just thought it was funny. Basically, I was just laughing at the guy. You got to watch this guy. He's like, I'll have to narrate it for the listener because there's no, it's just some noise. But here, check this out. So we're looking at a Trump won sign, and I assume this is, and a bicyclist rolls up, starts kicking it. But he's not satisfied. Yeah, now he's pushing himself very gingerly out of the grass and pedaling on his merry way.
Ow!
Now,
I hurt my toe.
Yeah, Well, this is like the embodiment of Trump derangement syndrome. He comes back. It's literally 4:19 a.m. And
That's when all the Trump
his,
people are out. That's when
Yeah,
they
well,
always have their unitations of sorts.
So anyway, I started blasting.
Yeah, exactly. You almost wish it had gone that
Is he
way.
has an
No,
underwear?
He's wearing his little.
It looks like he's naked.
It
He's
does
wearing-
look like he's naked.
It's okay. It's Pride Month. It's fine as long as he doesn't gratify himself in
Oh.
public.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
perfectly legal.
He's come to
wearing
gratify
his-
himself on the Trump sign.
He's wearing his padded bike shorts. You know, I guess he just had to go on a really early morning ride with a extended like grill lighter. Okay, check this out.
He looks like such a douchebag.
He looks like such a dweebo. He looks like a doofus. Like,
It's the Lycra hit squad.
yeah, and so he's holding the lighter against this Trump sign until it's on fire, and then he runs away. Did you see him running? This is the funniest part.
He ran like he definitely ran like a girl, didn't he?
He ran like a girl. He did.
Oh, Nelly, I did it now.
Okay.
I did it
Oh.
Like his
now.
wrists are full of helium.
One more time. I'll zoom in.
Golly gee willikers. It's
Oh, I
on
can't
fire.
do
Let's
it.
go.
In the
This
movies,
little-
they
this
walk
little-
away from fire slowly.
He even lights the fire like a girl.
Now the funny part is, apparently he came back.
He
and
tries to
did
bitch
it.
slap it.
Apparently he came back and did it again. Look at this. He oh, that was the same one. Yeah, there's it burning. Yeah, but look, this is apparently months later.
That's very unenvironmental. That plastic
If he
fumes
ever
going
gets,
into
if he ever gets done for arson, I'm sure he's going to love prison though. So it's a net positive for him.
arson.
He's already
so
got
we
the
can
tight
see.
shorts. He's already
Yeah.
got the tight shorts. He's ready.
Look at him running again. The second time, it's just like he's so queer.
As he runs,
Timestamp.
up slightly. It's like he's got helium in his wrists and his hands become lighter as he's running.
So apparently this says $1,000 reward for an ID of this guy, and actually
What's
you
the
can see
tattoo?
he's got like it's a weird like teddy bear face.
That's the
Yeah,
pedo
typical.
tattoo.
I was going
That's
to say
the
enhanced.
pedo tattoo.
Timbo.
Is it?
Nambler.
Yeah.
No, that's
That is
Radiohead,
it.
I think. No, Radiohead had it.
Same
It's like an
difference.
alarm clock.
What's the difference?
Or is it Mickey
think-
Mouse?
Well, it's like Mickey Mouse, except the ears are too small. I think it's a teddy bear.
Intersectionality.
Yeah.
I thought it
Hello?
was maybe like a Tokyo, what do you call that stuff? Manga? Maybe? Something like that?
Yeah.
More like
I mean,
mangle.
I just thought that guy was silly as hell. You know, it's like, again, Ando's probably going to sit here and tell us, oh, that's staged. It's too funny. The running, you know.
It's
I
so
want to
gay.
see the timestamp. The timestamp is 4:20, and
Yeah.
so he went at 4:20 to blaze up. But this is, I guess he went and he kicked it, and it hurt his foot, so he got really drunk, and he came back in the middle of the night.
He probably
don't
had a
think
few
he
too
gets
many
drunk.
Shirley Temples and got angry and went back. I'm going to show them, Stephen. I'm going to show them.
I'm on a
Well,
sugar
the
rush.
other-
I'll slap a bitch.
The other thought that I had was that he had an entire camera dedicated to a sign,
Yeah.
like a whole Nest camera dedicated to that. I don't know. That's
Hey,
a little
maybe
bit.
maybe this is like the 5th sign that has been lit on fire.
I was
and
wondering
finally-
that if
Yeah.
that happened often. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
Why
probably
didn't
like,
he put
"Fuck
some tannerite
them."
in it or M80s or something? So it would be a reactive target of sorts.
Well, yeah. Here's an
way
invention
more
for
in front
you,
of it.
Rob.
Yes.
You got to invent it. The exploding yard sign.
I got 10 pounds of tannerite on that one.
It's
I
like a
can do it.
claymore, but it's got your favorite politician's name on it.
Si se puede. Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah.
Speaking of the sign was a Trump one sign. So speaking of Trump, and you're mentioning about reclaiming all the BLM land and all the parks and everything like that. Trump actually floated an idea of doing this and starting what's called freedom cities, but it's really just the Republican version of 15-minute cities. So like y'all just stay vigilant, and whenever you see that come down the pike, go, okay, yeah, I knew this was going to happen.
But Ando, what would you rather go for? A white sterile pod or a pod with the American flag on it and a bald eagle? Which one's got the greater selling point there?
The eagle, for sure.
I'm not going to any pods. Eating any bugs. I don't care if they're American bugs.
But they're freedom bugs.
Yeah, freedom bugs. There's going to be all kinds of ridiculousness coming with all of the Agenda 2030 stuff, and both sides are in on this. Just to let everybody know, both sides.
So this idea that that the fires in Maui were part of a attempted land grab. How do we feel about this? Because I was skeptical the first few days when people start talking about lasers from the sky and all kinds of crazy stuff. But then I start seeing these on the ground videos where you have like palm trees that are untouched right next to like a pile of ash, and like whole neighborhoods that are burnt, but then like just on the other side of the street and nothing's burnt. And from what I hear, they did not have the best fire department, and like the response was not good. So how come the fires just stopped in certain places and started in others? I don't know. I guess I'll open it up, but maybe I'll play this first, only because this is a guy that I know personally. Okay. He is part of the No Agenda community. I've met him at No Agenda meetups, and he's funny. He's a stand-up comedian, and he's got this company that I'll just plug him real quick because he's a good dude. It's called Bottoms Up, where they make a plastic beer cup that fills with draft beer from the bottom, as opposed to pouring over the top. And the idea is, it's a pretty genius idea. I'll just plug Bottoms Up. I won't talk about it no more. But this is pretty good.
Mutual friend he's a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and he has been going on about how the Maui fires were caused by direct energy weapons. And since I have technically a miniature direct energy weapon in the form of a laser, this is a 1500 watt laser, so tiny in the grand scheme of things. I just want to show him that that's ridiculous and it doesn't work. So you see that red dot right there? That's where the laser beam is going to shoot, and it's not going to be okay. See? He's an idiot.
Safety's on.
Shit.
All right, so he makes a little joke out of it. He's like pulling the trigger, and he's like, "Oh wait, the safety's on," and then he pulls it, and his little cardboard house just instantly goes into flames. So again, I'm not saying I know what happened out there, but what do y'all think?
There are volcanic tunnels all underneath that area. If you wanted to burn it down, you could literally just start fires, plant incendiary in there, and they would creep up, making it look like it's coming from nowhere. So that's one theory I heard that made about the most sense I've heard so far.
There was also a woman who mentioned that she saw the fire coming out of the ground, and knowing that that's an active volcano site there as well, I thought the same thing, that there'd be chambers under the ground that could have been tapped into, whether that's by the hand of man or just naturally. It definitely could have spread underground and made it look like it was going everywhere at once.
Well, I don't know if you are able to get that video that I posted recently, but it shows how all the millionaires, billionaires' houses were completely missed, and the fire went right around them, and
Yeah.
everything else was devastated. So there's that. Hell of a coincidence.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff about this situation, and I was just thinking about a picture that I saw. I wish I would have saved it. But it was showing, you know how it was bizarre, the damage, if these pictures were real, like steel just melted in the road. Have you seen that? I mean, and then
Yeah.
there was an image with the cars and everything looks like a bomb hit it basically. And then there was like in this picture a charred dog that was like upside down, and somebody was like, are you telling me it's going to do all of this damage to these cars and yet a dog would not be turned to ash? Like, so then I wonder, are maybe that picture was staged and it's just being put out there to muddy the waters, but there's just so many weird things about the whole thing.
Yeah, that picture that Stu Peters posted, which was apparently a laser coming down, it actually turned out to be a time lapse of a rocket taking off. So that was absolute crap. Big surprise from him.
Yep.
But it's all very reminiscent of the East Coast fires we've had in the last couple of years within Australia. It's you're seeing that there's structures, cars that are completely decimated, but bushes, trees, flowers, all natural things around them don't seem to be hit. They don't even spontaneously combust because of the heat, which is practically impossible to happen knowing how natural bushfires occur. So there's definitely some fuckery going on there.
Direct energy has
Yeah.
been around since the 70s. It might not have been put onto satellites by that time, but it was definitely around back then. And there is a phenomenon in the military, Rob probably knows about this, called Havana fever. Can you give a little bit more details on that, Rob?
Well, that's basically where they're using radio waves to manipulate the human body and or things around it. So a lot of people don't realize it, but there's actually a few type of lasers. One of the ones that BAE's systems was working on when I was at Raytheon utilized a microwave radar system to create a tunnel, okay, using a waveguide. And then down that tunnel, it would then shoot the laser. What that did effectively was move all the particulate in the air out of the way and create an ionized beam for the laser to travel down, which means that to be effective, the laser doesn't need to be anywhere near as powerful as it otherwise would need to be. So it's almost like the laser's going through a vacuum, following that ionized tube that's created by the microwave energy. So Havana syndrome works along the same lines as far as the radio frequency component of it. And basically, it's just short-circuiting your brain, more or less. And Havana syndrome was first seen in the 30s by people, being induced in people who worked in Radio Shacks, because they would be around all those high frequencies. And back then, we didn't really shield things very well. So the operators were getting hammered with all this stray RF. And some of them were having various types of things, headaches, memory loss, cognitive issues, blisters. And everybody's heard the story about the guy who was sitting in front of the microwave with a lawn chair during guard duty in the Air Force, who literally cooked one of his kidneys. Y'all know about that? Have you heard of that story? Yeah. And they told him, see all those birds out in that field? Well, they didn't get a minor amount of the radio frequencies that you ended up getting by sitting in front of this thing and eating your lunch. So they ended up having to take the guy to the hospital. So
there's a similar story here of a guy who sat on one of the towers and he dangled his legs in front of one of the receivers, and they found him up there dead, sitting there with his lunch in his hands, and his legs were completely black.
Yeah.
Oh.
A lot of the guys would get together and figure this out and tell each other. And as long as they didn't do a full power sweep, you would be okay. You'd just be warm, right?
I know.
But if they
do a guy
full power test, the guy gets fried.
I know a guy who's a stagehand here in Indy, and I've done some work with the stagehands. He was telling me how he went up. He was doing some rigging up in the rafters of the football stadium, right, for the Indianapolis Colts, Lucas Oil Stadium, and he's up there, and there's these fucking 5G, emitters, whatever, transmitters, whatever you call them, and he's like working a spotlight for a concert, and he said he felt it the whole time, and then for the next week he felt like absolute dog shit, and it's like that was basically Havana syndrome, I think, right?
You can even get it from being too close to a balancing station or a power substation. I mean, that's not even really high frequency, but there is a lot of stray RF from the switching and etc. So
it just reminded me of a story that I was reading not long ago, which you probably know about, Rob, back in 2021, where Russia was being accused of the Havana syndrome attacks in Russia of the USA diplomats in the Kremlin area, in the Moscow area. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
It's like a building was being targeted.
The CIA said there was nothing to it. Don't worry about it.
That's right.
It was all in their head. Remember that? I shit you not. They said that it was mass hysteria, mass formation psychosis. Sound familiar? They said that in 2019. Remember that?
Well, I just want to say welcome to Phytophiliac, who has joined us.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Yeah, I've
How
been
you doing?
I'm doing all right. I've been living at the hospital since Thursday, so
Oh man.
my husband's in the hospital, so we're just waiting and mostly waiting. He's doing okay. He's much better now than when he first got here, but
Oh man.
yeah, I've got my camera blocked because my hair is a hot mess, and y'all don't need to see that. So,
That's all right.
but doing good. Not too bad. It was a heck of a way to end my week off from work. So I'm glad it happened. If it had to happen, and I'm glad it happened when it did. But but yeah, I'm here. I have nothing to bring to the conversation except any additional commentary. So y'all just lead the way.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that your husband's ill, and I hope he gets better. I'm sure I speak for everybody in saying that.
He's definitely on the uphill climb, so he's doing good.
Well, we'll be praying for you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sure will.
Well, thanks for jumping in. I mean, I'm sure it's easy to get a little stir crazy when you're living out of a bag at the hospital. So glad you made the time for us, and I hope we can entertain you or make you laugh along the way or something, lift your spirits.
Oh yeah, I've kind of been since Thursday. I haven't really paid much attention to anything that's been going on. So the only thing that I did catch was on I happened to be scrolling through Twitter this morning, and I noticed that Ryan actually posted that his channel on Discord had been completely deleted. They took him off of Discord, and they even deleted some of the accounts of his admins.
And Ryan has been really good on all this direct energy weapon stuff. He was one of the only people to explain what happened in Beirut, whenever that happened a couple years ago. Y'all remember the storehouse just going up in
The
flames?
so-called explosion.
The fertilizer
Yeah.
place, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So-called. And we were talking about the Discord issue this week too, about how they got hacked. Actually, Discord IO got hacked. However, people and experts, hacking experts at Microsoft, were saying that actually Discord also got hacked. Somehow they were able to use the information that they use, login information from Discord IO, to gain access to all the accounts in Discord. And I guess it sounds like Discord also was taken offline temporarily, and a lot of the accounts were reviewed at that time. So it wouldn't surprise
So
me
you
if they
think
just
maybe it
blame it
was
on the hack.
I was going to say, so you think maybe it was a hack job that did it, and not actually
False.
someone at Discord? Yeah, like a
Well,
false.
they might be using it as an excuse now. Oh, it got hacked. Sorry. Sucks to be you. Oh well.
Also, Microsoft has been really intent on buying Discord, so
Yes.
that's been going along for years now.
Well, the picture that Ryan posted showed that his channel was disabled. It did not actually say deleted, so maybe it's still there, and maybe they can reinstate it. But I'm not holding my breath. He's been pretty on the nose with everything he's been reporting here lately, so it wouldn't surprise me that this was a direct attempt at making him shut up.
I figured if before we move on totally from this like directed energy thing, Rob's got something and Stella posted something in the chat. Rob, what do you got there? What's your article?
Well, as of March 1st, 2023, they're back to saying that 5 U.S. intelligence agencies concluded is very unlikely. Before they said there was no way. Now they're saying unlikely. So they went from saying there's no way to yes, it was a directed energy weapon of some sort. And now they're back to saying very unlikely. So believe what you want to believe, I guess.
Stella, I'll pull yours up. What you got for us here?
Oh, that was just about the Havana syndrome thing. I just thought if you wanted to put it in show notes or something, just it sort of explains what was going on in Moscow and some of the symptoms, what people were.
The CIA as a covert operative in Afghanistan, Iraq, chasing terrorists across the Middle East. But one night in a Moscow hotel room in 2017 was like no other.
I think about all the times in war zones where I've been shot at or rocketed. This was by far, though, the scariest night of my life.
At the time, Polymeropoulos, the CIA's #2 official for clandestine operations throughout Europe, says he woke up suddenly in the middle of the night with a sense of vertigo.
I was falling over in my room. I thought I was going to vomit. I was incredibly nauseous. I had this incredible ringing in my ears, and I knew something was really wrong with me.
The episode just the start of debilitating symptoms that upended his life. He says similar to scores of other cases reported by American diplomats and spies that began in 2016 in Havana, then hit American officials in China, and have since been reported by CIA officers in several other countries. What could be the cause? After a year-long investigation, 19 top experts from the National Academies of Sciences conclude the most likely explanation: directed pulse microwave energy, consistent with the directed radio frequency energy attack.
This is not a cell phone. This is not what you see from a microwave oven. This is a very particular and unusual way of delivering microwave energy.
Stanford professor of medicine David Relman chaired the study.
We have neurologists on our committee that said afterwards, in my entire career of reading about countless hundreds and thousands of cases of neurologic injury, I've never heard of something like this.
This is really unique in the medical literature.
It is.
New Hampshire Senator Jean Shaheen has been fighting for medical benefits for the victims.
I fear that what we have seen to date is not going to end. We're going to see more of these kinds of attacks in the future, and we need to be prepared for them.
Is this one of these things where it's just a like we're gonna threaten you, like we can do whatever we want, like whether or not this is a legit story, like fear the government because we have these tools, or is it legit?
Who knows?
So years ago, so this guy was complaining about psychosomatic illness or distorted the findings of a research paper to blame the symptoms on sounds made by crickets. Okay? Let me make a key point here. There was, back in my ham radio days, there was a signal back in the 90s called the Russian woodpecker. And what it was over the horizon radar detection system. Okay. And it would make cricket sounds on your radio. And oftentimes, not just with a ham radio, you would hear it on a walkie-talkie, you could hear it on shortwave, etc. So I find it very funny, very odd, very strange that they would use sounds and clicking sounds made by crickets to describe this particular syndrome, and then go on to say that it's psychosomatic. It's unreal.
I have a list here. It's a PDF actually, and I'm desperately trying to find because it seems to have disappeared from the internet now, but I'm glad I downloaded it. Several pages of direct energy weapons / targeted individual patents. And I believe the oldest one goes back to a few pages here. 1953 is pretty much, this is all patents. So it sort of starts back in 53 and, goes back, I think the latest one is around about 02. There might be a later one than that. But you can just, it's interesting to look at the whole progression of what they've developed over the years. I've only really looked into a couple of them because there's a hell of a lot of reading in each one, and I don't know how many there are here, probably about 70, something like that. So if I can find that link, and I'm just looking in the Wayback Machine, I'll definitely post it because I think everyone should have a look at it.
Yeah. Well, while you look for it, let's see what Rob just shared here. This is is this the sound you're talking about?
Yes, this is the Russian woodpecker signal.
If you melt my brain, Rob will be very disappointed.
Let's turn it off now.
It sounds like a helicopter to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It depends on where you were and what frequency you were on, etc. It can sound everywhere from just a hammering kind of this sound all the way to a very loud click, depending on where you're picking it up in the world.
So you're saying they developed it as a form of radar. I guess I'm trying to put the pieces together here. Is the significance of the cricket sound that it is somehow it behaves differently as like a sound wave, or what are you saying?
Well, this sound it's a sudden spike. Okay, this signal's a spike, goes out, and it basically bounces more because of the nature of it. Very high intense pulse, and that tends to go a lot further than just a regular standard wave. Okay, so you don't want to use a continuous wave. All you're trying to do is send out this signal and then look at it coming back and trying to determine if there's a plane or a missile or what have you. But it's very destructive. Most countries went away from this type from this type of system probably back in the 60s, but Russians being who they are, they don't give a damn. So
When I was a kid, there was a radio station that changed formats, and so I usually, whenever a radio station changes formats, they just start playing their music, and there's a few days before the station picks up. Sometimes, I mean, these days, I'm sure that they just right off the bat they're ready to go. But there was an in between time, and there was all kinds of weird sounds, and I remember as a kid being really like I'm listening to the noise just because it was weird, because it was the radio station that I listened to all the time, and then it was all this, and then it came back as a completely new thing.
it was basically EDM before there was EDM, right?
Well, there was stuff like they played some comedy bits, they played some jingles, but they also had a lot of noise. It sounded a lot like what you just played. Interesting.
Somebody in the comments, well, I guess Drew said that dolphins click, and Rob says, yeah, it's like bats and dolphins, and this premise of like sound wave, whatever radar, it's nothing new, but directed energy is kind of another like level perhaps. And I don't know, man, I guess you can possibly like get some data by listening to the radio waves, but I mean, I'm more and more curious about sort of this behavior off the ionosphere, the Schumann resonance stuff, and also like the resonant qualities of the earth and of stone. And obviously there's been some conjecture as to why the pyramids, how the pyramids, all these what do you call them, the spikes, obelisks, and sort of what their purposes were, and a lot of these megaliths and monoliths and stone circles, and I mean, like, something I had never considered, but I heard just recently, like crop circles. Is it behavior of like the atmosphere that crushes the crops down, or is it coming up from below?
Yep. That's interesting you should say that, because I was just looking at some very recent crop circles this morning, which I hadn't looked at for ages because I'm actually really interested in crop circles. And I think we might have discussed this, Mike. I'm not sure. Maybe when we did a show, we talked about the possibility of the crop circles coming from under the ground, because it's just as viable, isn't it? It could be like magnetic or something, who knows? But my stepfather, who was an English man, he was a video producer, and he actually did a documentary on crop circles in Britain before he came to Australia. And I mean, he's the reason I got into video editing and stuff. So he told me about a story of when they were recording, and it was a fairly small crew, and they had the audio dude, headphones, whatever, watching the meters, etc. And he said, and I know he wasn't bullshitting me, he said that if they stayed outside the crop circle, like they didn't stand on the pattern, that everything was fine. But as soon as they stepped into the circle and stood on that ground, there was a definite signal that was happening and coming through audibly in the equipment. So, yeah, that's he didn't really tell me much more about it, and I never got to see the documentary, unfortunately. But that was on Boots on Ground report, which I thought was quite interesting. I've found that PDF there, so I encourage everyone to download that and start looking up some of these patents. It'll blow your mind.
So these are patents for like direct energy weapons.
Direct energy weapons, targeted individual patents, and on the very last page, it's sort of basically information for targeted individuals as well. So there's some helpful stuff at the end that people can just for people to understand, so that they don't think they're crazy, basically. If they, information is knowledge, isn't it?
I don't think people quite understand the scope of how far frequencies and frequency tech can go. Like I was mentioned in the chat earlier that the wave of the late 80s and early 90s of spontaneous human combustion, that's come down to a lot of theories and leaks that it was directed radio waves on an individual person to the point where it's getting the molecules and the atoms in the body to a frictional state that it actually causes the human body to combust. So if we're thinking about that as a conspiracy theory, and then we see police around the world, particularly in Australia, roll out the mob dispersal units where they shoot people with radio waves to make them feel hot and fuzzy until they leave, they're already telling us the tech's there. And we see that with the directed energy weapons. There's laser systems you can use to cut down limbs of trees, and then we see what they've got on destroyers to take out drones in the Navy of the world. They're there, they're telling us, but if you talk to the average person about it, it's all conspiracy theory, and they think it's someone like a Dr. Evil with sharks with laser beams attached to their heads trying to take out Hawaii.
Right. I did see a video of a tree crew cutting like limbs off of trees and like palms off of palm trees, and that kind of blew my mind, man. And
it says here
I'm muted. That was my bad. I was talking.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were finished.
I was just gonna say I seen that tech where they tree trimming and like cutting palms off of palm trees with lasers. I just saw that recently. It's crazy, man.
It's for your health and safety. The ALF-VEN waves, ALF-VEN waves, it says here, requires plasma in order to create the ELF waves. Ionosphere is plasma. Indigo skyfold is also plasma. So, yeah, they're harnessing their plasma. And that PDF that I posted earlier, which was about using fire as weaponry, I haven't read the whole 171 pages, but that goes up to, it's fairly old tech now. I'm not sure where it's sort of stopped, but obviously they're going to release it if it's old because now they've got the technology for Jews. But it was really interesting anyway to look through it, how precise. This was sort of basically using Vietnam, sort of most of it, that's the examples. But they're so precise, like down to the point of they know exactly what foliage is where, they know what the foliage does at different times of year, how the farmers harvest, etc., and what that does to the ground. And obviously they weren't relying a lot on weather engineering back then, because it says a number of times through that PDF that it was essential to have meteorologists on board that were very good at what they did, because it was very dependent on weather, how all these operations took place. For instance, knowing exactly when the monsoon's finished and all that stuff. I mean, that's all fairly obvious, but just down to the detail of knowing that when this leaf of this plant falls, the leaf then creates this after 2 weeks, and then it starts to do this after 6 weeks. And so then they know that they've got to drop pellets a month or so before the monsoons come, and then they've got to drop some other thing that gets the foliage, and how napalm isn't much good for starting fires and all that. It's just really, it's down to the twig, basically. So it's none of that sort of really that necessary now, is it? Because they've just got the direct energy, fine laser focused thing. It's so much simpler.
The elites have been doing this since time immemorial. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Roman history and Ignatius Rufus. He was one of the most powerful men in Rome. He was up there with Caesar, and he had a little ploy and a little con where he had his own private firefighting group. And what he'd do is he'd get his men to go around deliberately light fires on people's properties and houses. He'd show up with his firefighting crew and then get a really, really high payment to put it out, or he'd let the house burn. And if the house burned, he'd just buy the land for pennies on the dollars. So the elites have been using fire as a method to take out property and land since the ancient times.
I mean, I heard somebody making some speculation about sort of like the Chicago fire and the San Francisco fire and some of the, the burning of the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and like, a lot of these buildings are stone. I mean, how does a stone building catch fire?
Exactly. I've always wondered that.
Look at the London fires. The fire that burnt down London, everything at that time was wooden. And what did they replace it with? Romanesque Greco-style buildings that were made of stone. It's like they burnt down all the old stuff and they came back in and the Masons took over.
Yeah. Perhaps that was it. Maybe the majority of the city might have been built of wood back in the day, but yeah, I mean, some of these historic fires, it's just like, how does a whole city burn down? I don't know.
There's speculation about the fact that maybe the Alexandria fire was a lie, and that they actually just removed all the books, and they're probably under the Vatican. That's just speculation.
That would be a great cover, right? You don't want anybody to go look for the books. So you start a fire maybe in the front area, but you've already evacuated most of the literature, right?
Exactly.
It's just it's the original Reichstag fire, isn't it?
More or less.
Blame it on
yeah.
someone else. But there was more than one Library of Alexandria. They were scattered across the ancient world. So it's more than just one source of knowledge that was potentially lost. It's multiple places.
Right.
Right, I wasn't aware of that. So what was the Library of Alexandria? Where was that? Like in Alexandria? Is that just sort of like the well-known one, or what?
Yeah, that was the original. They kind of sprung up like fast food joints all across the ancient world. Alexander the Great. He had one in every major city.
Drive-through scrolls. Right, cool.
Well, I was listening to what was it called? My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. Have you guys ever listened to this podcast?
Yeah, Mark, what's his name?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they were talking about how like some of these ancient structures and like the stone craft and how it's very difficult to understand, and like even some of the sculptures and like the level of precision and polishing, and how it's just like beyond our capabilities to do at this point, and how there's kind of this idea that perhaps it was some form of what they call it, like polymers, is that, or something like that, where you almost could turn things into stone, right? Think like concrete. I mean, I guess that's kind of the best analogy, but they talked about how like in a lot of these buildings, I want to say in Italy, in Rome, have like, I forget what it's called, but the beam that spans the doorway, how when you take a cross section, it looks like just stone on the outside, but you take a cross section and it has rings as if it was a tree at one point, sort of like petrified wood. I don't know if you've ever seen petrified wood, but this process of converting something from, a living sort of cellulose based thing into pure stone, like rapidly, and how they were basically arguing that it had a lot to do with plasma and the harnessing of like vast amounts of electricity. It was all a bit above my head, but I'd be curious if any of y'all have heard anything like this, or if it's totally crazy.
I would more assume that maybe some of these components were basically 3D printed, right? Because 3D printing has layers. That would make a lot more sense.
There is some speculation about some of these structures that we can't explain about how they were built, about them possibly being like liquefied somehow and set into place that way.
And they're triggered to cure maybe by a chemical and or heating process, right?
It would go a ways to explain the vases from like what ancient China, isn't that right? That are like, they're igneous stone, but they show like zero signs of machining. They're incredibly like paper thin. The process of carving out a piece of igneous stone like that would be insane. And then they have these lug handles that are inexplicable. Like how they were able to carve this, we have no clue. If it was a liquid poured into a mold that was turned into igneous stone, that certainly would make more sense. But again, it's beyond our ability to even comprehend how they did it at this point. I think it's been a humbling few years for me, because I totally bought into the idea that we were the pinnacle of human knowledge and intelligence, but it just seems like that's a pretty big assumption to make.
Not even the basic guide. Sorry,
go ahead. Oh,
I was just gonna say if go.
There's a delay.
Somebody speak.
Help.
All right, I'll quickly get in. Even the idea of the domes that you see in top of in Roman cities and Greek cities, that Greco-Roman style, where it goes up and it's all stone, and people wonder how could they have possibly held that heavy stone on top? Well, they changed the porous structure of the concrete. Instead of using heavier stones, they used porous volcanic rocks, which are lighter. So that as the dome went up, it became a lighter structure. And you throw into that like the things we see in Machu Picchu and these monolithic stones that look like they're perfectly cut to fit into like a jigsaw puzzle. It definitely alludes to what Stella was talking about, how it looks like it was a poured mold and left there to set in place.
Yeah, well, it would explain the fact that these stones are so perfectly put together, and you can't even stick a credit card in between them, which is sort of the measuring stick they seem to use. It's impossible to. I have no idea.
Well, have you guys heard of? I just had to look it up. Terra Preta. It's the like biochar, like super soil that they've discovered in the Amazon that enabled them to grow incredible amounts of food and support a massive empire back however many thousands of years ago. And biochar is something that is only like it's kind of underground right now in our culture. People are rediscovering the benefits of activated carbon in the soil for growing food. And like we don't fully understand how they created this beautiful like super soil back thousands of years ago. And it's just, it's one more example of how we're not as smart as we fucking think,
Is that the soil that they said was curated that's in the Amazon area?
Yes. So
got it.
I think what they supposedly did is they kind of dug trenches and they built fires and they chopped and dropped like vast amounts of organic matter from the forest into these burning, trenches. But they did it in a very precise kind of way. And then once they had like a good low, slow burning fire with all this green material steaming, they'd bury it with soil and just let it cook in like an oxygen-free environment. And it would sort of like the same principle as a vaporizer for like cannabis. It's not burning the material, it's simply carbonizing it. And what you're left with is this activated charcoal that holds on to nutrients and holds on to moisture, and the surface area of the carbon molecule is so great that you end up with this soil life that's just off the charts in terms of mycelium and everything. So it's kind of cool. Like, again, I think we're almost at this renaissance point. I think about like these guys from history that it's astonishing to think what like Michelangelo accomplished in a lifetime. How do you do that without having some, superior knowledge of like, I don't know, there had to be technologies at play that we don't understand.
He didn't have a 9 to 5 and taxes to the level that we have today.
That's
exactly
fair. Yeah.
But it's interesting you're talking about that the soil that's found in the Amazon, because they created something that takes nature thousands of years to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
The similar product that we find today, people have to drill down to the bottom of bogs and draw out from the very bottom where it's settled in for thousands of years to build up to that capacity. I drink it on a daily basis. It's black as black. It stains your teeth if you're not careful, but it's awesome stuff. And to think that they could have created that in a simple way of digging a hole and burning organic matter and covering it back up. There's probably a lot more to it, but you're right. It seems that the more we find out, the less we actually know compared to the ancients of our past.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually some videos,
Shilajit, right? The Shilajit.
What's
humic acid?
Yeah, humic fulvic acid.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. The humus, yeah.
Yeah. There's actually some videos on YouTube, I was just going to say, that it shows you how you can make your own activated charcoal, just if anyone's interested in that.
Mm-hmm. It's something I'm very interested in. I think maybe there's going to be a lot of money in biochar for gardening. And that's what I do. So
Yeah, well, I hate to think
Yeah.
of how the Amazon's going to suffer from this discovery, really, because I mean, geez,
Well-
it's really under attack. It's been under attack for so long. I'm surprised there's any of it left, to be honest.
hey, bag it up, sell it at Walmart. Fuck.
Yeah,
Why don't we
exactly.
just make an Amazon everywhere? How about
That'd
that?
be good. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's what
I
she's
think they're
saying.
working on that, but they're big factories and they have robots in there that work. It's a different
Well,
type of Amazon now.
Oh,
So, but there's two
The wrong
different types.
Amazon.
There's two different types of like greening, right? There's the we're gonna burn your home and kick you off the land and put you in a 15-minute city and turn it all into, I don't know, indigenous lands, I guess, right? We're gonna fence
Whatever
it
the hell
off.
that
and-
is.
Yeah,
What is
whatever
that?
the fuck that. Yeah, we're gonna kick all the regular folks out of the national parks, even though we're barely let in to begin with, and we're gonna give it away to this certain group of folks. And then there's the other type of like re-greening the world, and that's decentralized redistribution of lands and application of permaculture principles, growing fucking food on the soil. It's not that fucking complicated, you know. I'm such an advocate, but it's so much cheaper to go to Aldi.
People that can afford it.
Yeah.
Can we maybe Rob can chime in on this one? I'd really like to talk about the fact that the carbon atom is actually 6 neutrons, 6 protons, and 6 electrons. 666. We
Yes.
address that. That is true. Thank you.
Depends on, well, I think it depends on the type, but I think that's C60. I think that's the big issue with that, why they use it for medicinal purposes. The perfect buckyball.
Right. It's interesting because, like, in the Bible, we probably know, Revelation 13:18, here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Well,
And without
we're
carbon, we don't exist.
Exactly. So, did we just unravel the mystery?
Maybe.
So would that be some kind of illustration of just the fact that this earth is of you know, the unholy? I hate to say that because I love this planet. You know,
Yeah, a thought occurred to me. You know, maybe it's to imply that it's a human being that is not augmented in a way. It is someone who isn't, who hasn't taken in any of the technology that they're presenting to us right now. You know, there are all these implants and the chips that are coming. You know, they're going to want to put them in our hands so that we can, you know, link our digital IDs and stuff like that. Maybe it's someone who is fully organic, doesn't have any of that stuff in them.
Well,
I don't know if that's true, but it's a thought.
it's supposed to be like the days of Noah, right? And in the days of Noah, he was the only one that had a pure bloodline. It was Noah and the 7 other people. So you might be onto something there.
Yeah, are they trying to somehow eradicate all the carbon atoms out of the human body somehow and just replace them with whatever, silicon?
Well, they
or
have
whatever.
a war against carbon, right?
Paranoid.
Yep.
So
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Trying to eradicate carbon because it's pollution. Like they just see us as pollution, really.
Yes.
Because it makes me think of that passage of scripture. I think about it often where Jesus says, "The meek will inherit the earth," and you know, when you think about the word meek, it is someone who is it's like you think demure, or someone who's like, you know,
Humble.
not, yes, humble and not like, you know, top of the game. It's someone who's just a regular everyday person. And then you think
Someone
about
who
all the
may actually be a little bit, how can you say it?
not
redundant.
unintelligent, but
Naive,
you know,
maybe.
yeah,
Innocent.
maybe.
It
but-
also translates as innocence in
Right.
some of the texts. So
But if you think about the technology that they're pushing, you know, they're trying to get people to have these brain computer interface chips into their brains, and you know, they're using any and every excuse to get people to put them in, you know, like for treatment of mental health diseases, or people who have neurological disorders or paraplegia, to stimulate the brain to, send the signals back down to the legs to make them work again. They're using it for medical purposes to start with. That's how it always starts. And so it's my thought, because this they're looking at maybe even using it to advance intelligence as well, like a computer augmented intelligence, which if you have that, then that you can process things a lot faster. Just really trying to marry that whole human and machine kind of concept. And I think that when it all comes to an end, everybody who's got all that stuff implanted into their bodies, they're not going to survive. There's going to be something that happens, and the people that don't have that stuff in their bodies are the only ones that are going to live.
Yeah, they're going to short circuit.
Even if you look at common media, when you're just talking about the meek inheriting the earth, The Stand by Stephen King, one of the best-selling books around the end of the world, right? And especially with it ties into the biblical Armageddon and everything that goes along with that. After this virus goes through, wipes out the majority of the world, there's two groups of people left: people who are living humbly under God's law and rule in a small little town, and there's people living in LA, in Las Vegas, in this giant city. At the end of this story, when a nuke goes off, the only people that are left are the meek, the people who are living humbly in their own little small town and society. It's not the advanced people with all the bells and whistles of Vegas.
If we're talking Bible verses, my sister sent me this today, and I really, really liked it. This is Isaiah 58, verse 11. The Lord will always guide you. He will satisfy you in a sun-scorched land and strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Now, that's the NIV version. But once again, man, I think it's like in a war against the great machine, what choice, what weapon do you choose? I choose the garden, brother. The garden,
Yeah.
I choose my weapon of choice is non-compliance.
Well, and that.
Yeah, being organic, remaining organic.
Yeah.
Let's rebel by
At all
just
costs.
remaining what we are. That's crazy.
Yeah. And you're not taking up arms to fight them. And I had a dream that kind of made some things make sense for me, in the fact when the Bible talks about putting on the whole armor of God so that you can defend yourself against the wiles of the devil. The thought occurred to me, God isn't asking us to fight battles. He's asking us to just be a witness to the battles that are being fought in our place. That we're not doing the fighting. The angels and the demons are doing the fighting, and we're to put on the protection of God so that the devil can't put in his sneak attacks and catch us off guard. And we're not actually doing any of the fighting.
I mean, this all kind of makes me think about Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum and the USDA and the FDA and this constant striving to centralize and control the food system, the land itself. This is a clip of a what do you call him? From the Netherlands, a Dutch person. And I think we hit on this like Dutch farmers thing a little bit, maybe a few months ago, but I just thought this was a good little clip and worth sharing. So here we go.
This is my hometown, folks. This is what we stand for. We stand united with farmers. They want to disown the farmers from their property. You know what it is when you don't have property anymore? You got children. What do you do with your children? You want to become a farmer. So please stand up. And also the farmers, we get our food. Our everything comes from the farmers. So when no farmer, no food. Please, 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 I beg you, wake up, wake up. Don't let this go down as many people go dead or something else, or just please wake up. Let the world show what's going on right here. It's no good. The agenda from Klaus Schwab, the 2030 agenda, this is rolled out. It's nothing to do with disown your own folks. It's terrible. Please wake up.
Strong words, man. Strong words. Like, people in my life, like, who were halfway normies, are starting to wake up to this shit, talking about Agenda 2030 and shit. I mean, it's encouraging, but, like, again, what do we do against the powerful elite? Plant a garden, man. I have no other real solutions for us.
Grow food. And it's a shame
I
that
think
people
we
weren't waking up
definitely-
40 years ago.
Yeah, we definitely need to be talking solutions as we're talking to these people who are starting to put two and two together and realize that, you know, this isn't going to end with our convenience in mind. We're going to have to work for it if we want to survive any of this. We have to put in the work. And you know, when a lot of people get angry about it because they don't know what to do. And so those of us who've been paying attention and see what's happening, we can offer solutions and just letting people know that they're not alone.
Any more thoughts? I do have another clip here. It's kind of in this same vein. You know, I have like 2 or 3 short clips, and I think they all it's a stream of consciousness here, but I think there's a lot of folks who are maybe halfway waking up, but they're just they're like in the hole, and they don't see how to get out of the hole. And this, I believe, is a Canadian woman. It was shared by Jordan Peterson, and you know, his little comment was like, well, good thing she can kill herself if she wants to.
I can't afford anything. I can't do anything. I have no way to get ahead anymore. So what's the point in any of it? I'm not okay. So many of us are not okay.
Yeah, that's it. Now I paraphrase Jordan Peterson. It's not as if he was advocating for her to go kill herself. He was making a comment on like the MAID, you know, medical assistance in dying. And I mean, if there's a symptom of a dystopian world, it's state-funded suicide.
Canada's one step away from state-sanctioned death panels again. We're not far off it. There was already doctors in Canada who had severely ill patients, and I can't recall the exact phrasing around it, but there was a young guy who had autism, who had other health complications, didn't have a girlfriend, and wasn't with his family. So the doctor suggested the best way to treat this person was through suicide. It wasn't actually treat the illness. It was because he had no real connections to the world and life in general. It's better for society if he just died. So we're on the cusp of that right now. And what happens when the government actually has full authority and a panel can dictate whether you live or die? We're very, very close to that complete dystopian future.
Yeah, I don't think we realise how much power how fragile the structure is. Like, I'm just going back actually in a few notes back. I've got this connection with this lady in Holland, or the Netherlands, I should say. I've been asking how she's going over there, and, you know, just trying to check whether what we're seeing is actually real, and she's verifying yes it is with the farmers, etc. But she also said something which concerns me greatly. She says our country is also for a big part below sea level, and there's a few things that they can do to flood land, because where I live there's an oval building that has one computer that can regulate all dams, valves and water levels in certain areas. And she lives in Rotterdam. They can mess with the big robotic valve that they have there in the harbour that keeps the water in check. So it's just the turn of a dial, and that whole country can be underwater. You know, that's freaky.
Remember the sustainable development goals that we did a couple weeks ago? That life underwater was one of them, and setting up little sea labs and possibly. I mean, I think that what they call the extraterrestrial life is life.
So I think that what Stella just said is a great kind of metaphor, right? With a few turns of the knobs and dials, they can flood the whole thing. I mean, I'm going to make the connection with our money, right? And how they control us with our money, and they can flood it, and they can do whatever the fuck they want by turning up or turning down the dials. This is kind of a callback to the Richmond North of Richmond song. This is Guy Swan talking about why your dollar, quote unquote, ain't shit, right?
So what does 2% inflation really mean? And the first thing to understand is that growth is natural. Growth naturally occurs and has nothing directly to do with money. Money isn't a consumption good. You don't eat it. It's not part of a production process. You don't have to shove a bunch of money into the machine to make shirts or sandwiches. So let's say the economy grows by 5%. Everyone together, collectively, made the economy 5% more productive. If the supply of money was static, that would mean that the relative price of all goods would fall by 5%. So everyone who contributed, who saved and did not consume those resources we needed to make more productivity gains, and who were working on a wage, got incrementally more wealthy. If you get paid $10,000 and you buy all of the things that you buy a set amount of things, and it's exactly $10,000. Well, if you have price deflation of 5%, if the economy grows by 5%, what happens is that at the end of the year, you can buy all of those exact same things that let you live the way you've always lived, and you'll have $500 left over because all of those things got cheaper. You got wealthier because you contributed and everyone contributed together, and the money reflected that added growth. The prices falling are the result of growth that has already happened. But the central bank and the government targets 2% inflation. What that means is that they want to counterfeit just enough new money into the system so that they would steal all of the 5% benefit. Everything that we did to make the world better was stolen plus 2% more. After a year of working your ass off, you got poorer. Now, to buy all of the exact same things, you need $10,200. You had to not buy something you had been buying previously. And who gets the printed money? Do you use the printer? Do they let you in to print your own money? The money is literally created in financial institutions. It's created by funneling it through the financial and banking system. It's a huge laundering scam, essentially, for counterfeit currency. Unfortunately, it's worse than just 2% because the real inflation rate, if you look at something like Shadow Stats or the Chapwood Index, especially in major cities, is closer to 8 to 12%. So you're essentially getting an income tax twice, and you just don't know it. And all of the second income tax is going straight to the counterfeit class. It's why you work your ass off and life continues to just seems to keep getting more difficult. And they don't target 2% for any magical reason. It's not some scientific analysis. It's just not enough for you to shoot them. Imagine there's just a neighborhood with 10 people and they produce all the water, they produce all the food, they do all the farming, they build the houses, and then there's just one guy who just prints money and buys all of this stuff from all of those other people. He doesn't contribute or do anything. He just prints the money and gets all of the things that we make. That's exactly what the counterfeit class does. They print, you work. You're just the exit liquidity for their token scam.
All right. I cut it off a second early there. I don't know what he says, but whatever. You get the picture. You know, that video, like, I kind of halfway don't like how simplistic he's talking, but I get it. Like, he's trying to explain stuff that people barely understand, myself included. Right? They make it so complicated so that you just go along unquestioningly. and say, oh, it's above my pay grade. But you have to remember these are just people that are pulling the strings and fucking manipulating the dials. They're not geniuses. You know, they're just, they maybe get the game in a way that the average folk doesn't have the time to. And again, you know, I mean, maybe this brings us to a whole nother topic of like, who runs the banks, you know? And I just hate to even say it, but what do we have about when we going to cover Oprah? Is this connected? I don't know what the deal with Oprah is, but I know she's got some weird stuff.
Well, she's been in the news again lately. So
really,
yeah. Her buddy John of God, I guess, got busted because he was actually targeting pregnant women and then holding them hostage and then keeping the children. And she waited a very long time to denounce him. So
She's also involved in the Maui land grab situation. So she owns a ton of property in Maui. And the weird thing is when you look at what she paid for it, it's almost nothing. That's the really weird thing. Then today, when I was listening to some other stuff about her, apparently she was also in Montecito, California, and there were wildfires there as well. But her property was untouched in both cases, Hawaii and California. And there was also a bit of a controversy. I'm not sure if this is Hawaii or California, but she had like a huge private road and people were begging her to use it. And she at first was not allowing them to use it. So there's a lot of weird stuff with her. But you know, when you understand who her friends are, you would know that she's a eugenicist. So it does not seem like a great leap to me to think that she's in on the 15-minute smart cities, the green agenda, you know, all the things.
Yeah, I remember when Mark Zuckerberg bought up some property in, I believe it was Maui. He erected fences and things, basically cutting off like age-old pathways that, you know, were people used for ages and ages, like back long time. He just came along and just cut them off. Didn't really care about the thoroughfares that, you know, had been used for centuries or what have you. So yeah, same sort of deal. And there was a whole list of those people that owned those mansions that were missed miraculously by the fires. It was surgical precision, those fires. Yeah.
Well, Stella, you shared this video, and I'm tempted to play a few minutes of it. But you put this in the chat, and I'm not even going to say the title of the video. Part of me is kind of astonished that it's even on YouTube, but
yeah,
I'm sure it's demonetized, which actually brings us to a whole nother subject maybe we'll hit on. But as far as the discrepancy in pay for content creators, both on YouTube and Twitter, and there's been a lot of stuff kind of being discussed about this. But I thought I'd play a little bit of this. It's kind of like the weird connection between like Black pop culture icons and let's just say, you know, a certain group.
And adrenochrome-addicted celebrities and powerful elites, but their actual complicitness in the very same crimes. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, both of which were a part of the pedophile network of human trafficking and blackmailing, were connected to Mossad, who is famous for their efforts in compromising people into complicity with the Jewish agenda. One good thing that came out of the Pizzagate investigation was the knowledge that satanic rituals are being practiced in a widespread manner, not only by Masonic elites, but by celebrities, politicians, and other cultural influencers also. It suffices to say that the abominations of ancient times, which seem to mostly be done in secret today, are more widespread than we even thought. Consider how they rub it in our faces with celebrities like Lil Nas X, Lady Gaga, and Jay-Z, all of which are known members of the Ordo Templi Orientis. In 1989, during a segment of the popular Oprah Winfrey program, a young Jewish woman, going by the pseudonym Rachel, testified that her family engaged in generations of ritualistic murder and cannibalism. During the show, Rachel said the following.
You come from generations of ritualistic abuse? Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700. And so you were... Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
During the program, Oprah asked, quote, "This is the first time I've heard of Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice?" To which Rachel responded, "Right. When I was young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant," unquote. Rachel also emphasized that it was not just her family that engaged in this demonic act, but many Jewish families across the country. As you can imagine, the Jews immediately took offense to the broadcast and demanded that it was terminated. Oprah, her producer, and their lawyers went into talks with the ADL of B'nai B'rith to try to come to an arrangement. Oprah issued a public apology shortly after. Speaking on behalf of the groups, Barry Morrison, the Midwest Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, said, quote, "We were satisfied that Oprah and her staff did not intend to offend anyone and that Oprah was genuinely sorry for any offense or misunderstanding," unquote. The ADL of B'nai B'rith and other Jewish influencers stepped forward and tried to discredit Rachel by calling her mentally handicapped. They also suggested that Oprah was promoting anti-Semitism. However, a year later, in 1990, Rachel once again stood forward and admitted everything she was saying in the past as truth and that it really was happening, as noted in the March issue 1990 of Cult Watch Response. In her interview, Rachel testified that she was a survivor of a multi-generational family who practiced human sacrifice and cannibalism. Aside from the physical aspects of ritual murder, where blood is being drank, there also seems to be a highly spiritual aspect behind it as well. Quite often in history, we see innocent people being slayed in order to appease some false god which requires it. Purim comes to mind. When we look into the reality of the war on terrorism and the oppression of the Palestinians at the hands of the Zionist occupying force of Israel, a Rothschild Jewish state, there is a constant brutal display of human sacrifice, and perhaps it's only loosely associated with the traditional idea of ritual murder as we know it. But if you were to count all of the civilian casualties in Palestine, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, Yemen, and other places of the Middle East, we end up with a figure of several million people. The Zionist think tank organizations situated all over the world are very quick to justify these killings in the name of their Jewish homeland and their claim to nativity over the land of occupied Palestine. The emblem of their flag is what the Bible calls the star of their god Remphan, which of course is associated with Babylon, occultism, and Moloch. Many Jews will try to claim that this is actually the Star of David, but a reading of the Torah will show you that that phrase, the Star of David, is never mentioned once. Every single year, Palestinian children are reportedly missing, usually after being taken into custody by the IDF. Many of these kids are taken into prison and never seen again. The United Nations has documented at least 78 of these missing children in their records since Israel's occupation in 1948. However, these are just the Palestinian children that are known to have gone missing. Nobody knows the actual number. Many journalists have made some connections to an illegal organ harvesting trade of which Jews have been at the forefront for almost 100 years.
All right, it's so spicy, like that's all I can take, you know. I I don't even I don't know what to say, y'all. I'm gonna leave it open, except to say that we have a new contributor to the forum here. T Green, tell me who you are, man. I'm sorry, I don't know you.
Oh, you know me very well.
Oh, Brandon. Should I have not said that out loud?
No, you're
Shit,
fine. You're
man.
fine.
Dude, you're just
It's
like a little
most
teeny.
people.
You're a little teeny
Most
guy
people just
down
know me
here.
by the green name, so.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
the white rabbit.
hilarious. Yeah, dude, good to see you, man.
Nice to see you as well. Thanks for having me on.
We're getting into the spicy shit. Hey, there he is. You look like you just fucking woke up, dude.
It's just been a long weekend. I'm getting ready for school, so.
Yeah. Right on, man. Well, welcome to the forum. What do you think?
Can I
Any
start
comments?
with Yahwism? This is an issue that I think a lot of people don't actually put a critical eye on. That the Old Testament in its current form is a heavily, heavily sanitized version of what Yahwism was, where Yahweh was the center god in an entire pantheon of Jewish gods, of which Baal was one of the actual lower tier gods in that group. So I've always been a person that's always, that the Old Testament and New Testament are written at different times, but they read very differently as different gods. Not dismissing that Yahweh isn't our God that's represented in the Old Testament, but there's definitely a lot of that, what we would consider today as satanic blood rituals, baby murder, those child sacrifices, all throughout Yahwism. And the only time it stopped was when the Jews at the time had a reformation around their God and went to a monotheistic version instead of a pantheon. They chose to go with the all-powerful one God and dismissed the other ones, which later became the other gods of Canaan, which had to be wiped out and destroyed by the Israelites. So it's a really thought-provoking point to come from as a Christian, to look at that type of history that we know it's in Scripture, it's in other texts, to really analyze it and pull it apart, because that Yahwism on its face is the most satanic thing you'll ever come across.
Yeah.
Well,
just looking at a verse in Ezekiel about drinking blood of people, and that it's Ezekiel 39, and it's there's things that you'll find all throughout, and so you have to know that the Old Testament has issues, and you're supposed to look at it that way. I see it as context for a lot of the New Testament. It's context, because drinking blood obviously expressly forbidden in Christianity. It's over and over again. Not even the blood of animals.
Well, isn't it? I think it's forbidden in Jewish, in the Torah, I guess. For something to be kosher, it has to be drained of all its blood. And isn't there something about, like, there's Talmudic Jews and there's what's the other?
Karaites
so there's
and Sadducees.
Well, so the Talmud is like a secondary scripture that changes a lot of the rules, right? I guess I shouldn't speak on it. I don't know.
It allows the greater Judaism to basically follow the words and interpretations of a man, whereas the Sadducees and the Karaites reject that.
Comparable to the Book of Mormon, perhaps, or it's like it's another book written by a man that claims to be divine, but the jury's out.
Yeah.
No,
and the problem with the Talmud and why they argue so much is that there are various leaders within Judaism, within the Pharisee Judaism, that have basically made, in some cases, drastically different interpretations of God's word. So it tends to lend itself to a lot of arguments, but it also tends to lend itself to a near, like almost like you're worshiping a human rather than God in a way. It basically gives the rabbis a lot of power within the community that they may or may not be deserving of.
We also have to remember, let's not put them all in one basket, because there's some Christian Jews as well. There's the secular Jews, there's a bunch of them. So that's why it's sort of confusing to, I mean, I'm still trying to wade my way through fully understanding it all. And
that's
of
the
course
problem
then-
with trying to categorize people. I don't know. You can claim a category, as we talked about with like the claim of, you know, I don't know, a right to reparations or to land because you're quote unquote indigenous. People can categorize themselves to some degree. I mean, what's Elizabeth Warren, right? She's indigenous, supposedly. You know? Yeah. So yeah, no, I'm with you, Stella. Like, we're not condemning a group. We're just saying we're trying to understand where all this shit comes from. I don't know. I'll leave it open. Anybody got words? I hate to even hit this topic as usual, but it keeps coming back.
It does that, doesn't it?
It's that Venn diagram, like I told you before, that, you know, it's like the people that are up to something, and then those people, there's probably the most over them. And it's come up all through history. And that's, you know, and their version of the story is always one day for no reason at all. And, you know, there's definitely something going on. All this occultic stuff, you know, look at how ritualistic all the Epstein and stuff that was going on. And speaking of themes, we were just talking about Oprah. No one mentioned that her friendship with Harvey Weinstein. That's, you know,
A very close friendship.
That's what I was going to, well, I was considering trying to tie it back to Oprah, because speaking of that, there are a lot of weird things with her. So and this is aside from the land grab stuff, but she kind of had been presented as America's sweetheart, you know, for a long time. She's got the magazine and the book club, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. Yes, girl. Like, that is very much what her reputation was. And then she's this philanthropist, and she just loves people. So she started a school in South Africa that my understanding is that they really didn't even want that school, and that it was exorbitant, like millions and millions of dollars that she spent on this school for, I feel like it was like 150 kids that she, quote, hand selected. And then there were girls that accused someone that worked at the school of, I guess, abusing them in a sexual way. And then that person ended up being cleared of all charges. Then there was another scandal there where a 15-year-old was apparently abusing other classmates. And then there was a baby found in a book bag at that school. A child gave birth at this school and had it in a book bag. And so that's a lot of weird stuff with that alone. And then Rob mentioned her relationship with John of God, and then her Harvey Weinstein relationship. It is super, super weird. And then pairing that with the video that Stella sent about this ritualistic sacrifice on her show. And she was just like, and anyway, like it wasn't even a big deal. It's very bizarre.
Did anybody catch that? She just railroaded right over it. Right over it.
Don't forget that she was also on Epstein's client list on Lolita Express multiple times.
Yeah.
Oh, and now that you say that, Fido, she has this weird video. I don't know if anyone shared that with you, Mike, where she was saying that she was an abuse victim herself by,
Yep.
I think it was either a cousin or a sibling. And then she's talking on a show about how if the abuser is any good, you won't even know what happened to you. And she gets a lot of heat for that. I will say that one thought that I had was, but that's actually true, right? If you are someone who is groomed, then that's actually true. That was something that gets...
I think she meant to say, if they know what they're doing, you won't know what they're doing.
And why would she be the one to know? That's
yeah.
why it's creepy, right?
Yeah, but she was saying that she was raped by either an older cousin or a brother and her uncle too. So she was presenting herself as an abuse victim. Now, of course, seeing where she has gone in her career from, these humble beginnings, I now question all that. I question these people that are super famous from that background. Even these days, even Dolly Parton,
Well, let me ask
who
this.
knows?
What do you think the chances are that Ghislaine Maxwell was a victim at one point? I mean, this is
I would say quite high.
yeah, this is a common trope where victims become perpetrators in terms
It's a
of
part of
sex. Yeah.
It's a part of the culture. They victimize their own children. It's not
Yeah.
just random kids that they buy or purchase or get hold of. They do it to their own kind, and that's like the highest power for them to do it to their own flesh. It's utterly disgusting, but yeah, you're right. They are victims in a sense, but it's done by their own families. It's disgusting.
Well, I mean, also the victimization is a good way.
I'm sorry. I was just saying it just goes back to desensitization. It opens that door for them to perpetuate that type of behavior, and they're used to it. So there's that.
What were you going to say there, Brandon?
I was going to say, it also is a really good way to create control in a person. The shame, the whatever that goes into being abused, it can make you very susceptible to being used for other things. Oh, I don't want this getting out there. You start to do whatever they tell you, and it just, I mean, how else are you going to control these people?
Who here thinks Hunter Biden was abused by Joe?
100%.
Well, wasn't there? Was it Haley Biden come out and say
Ashley
that?
Biden.
Or Ashley?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was her diary. And to what we were talking about before, I would also say that I think it's pretty well known that MK Ultra did use sexual abuse on its victims, because going through these really traumatic events can make you more susceptible to compliance and suggestion and things like that. So for sure.
And also these people with these kind of backstories, which Ashley was saying, that it's sort of, you've got to question them sometimes, because it's immediately, again, it's what am I trying to say? It's making people feel sorry for them. It's triggering the emotions, isn't it? So sort of they're not going to get questioned quite as much, and they're sort of like, yeah, they're sort of like the hero. They've made it. Oh, good for them.
Yes.
They've overcome. They're victorious. We're great, and then you don't really question them that much, because you think, oh, they're just an innocent victim. But then, yeah, it takes a long time to figure it out.
Like that rags to riches story, and you want to pull for them, right? Because you want to believe that the regular person, if they want to make it, that they can, and that they can come out being this amazing philanthropist. Look at how much people love Dolly Parton, right? She has the reputation of an angel, okay? And
but
I
she's
do
still
think,
shielded for the vax.
Yep.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long ago that she was getting pictures made, and she had a literal butterfly eye patch, the one-eyed symbolism of the butterfly. And she is Miley Cyrus's godmother, and Billy Ray Cyrus it was either his father or grandfather worked for the Federal Reserve. And he had this meteoric
I gotta
rise
go,
of
guys.
fame.
I'll
It's
see y'all later.
Oh, bye, Fido.
See you, Fido.
See you,
good
Fido.
luck.
One
Take care.
love.
As like the this good old country boy who's just really pretty and all the girls like him, and that's how he was presented. But now, and he has this close connection with Dolly Parton, and I'm like, I don't fucking buy it anymore. I don't know.
It makes you wonder about child stars, right? In general, like who chooses them, and the family lineage of some of them. Yeah, I almost wonder, like, I think Shia LaBeouf is one of the few that is trying to break away. Well, and it's no wonder so many of them end up fucked up, going to jail, hooked on drugs. But I don't know how y'all feel about Shia LaBeouf, but I love his last couple movies, and I think he's trying, man. He's trying to break out of the matrix. That's my gut take,
Have you seen the one where he's a priest?
No, I haven't.
I heard all sorts of stuff about it. I saw memes. I hear people talking about how it's just all this terrible, potentially anti-Semitic stuff. I cannot find it. it's like impossible to actually find to watch. And
Really?
yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I've seen photographs. Like I've seen him all dressed up in the robes and shit, but yeah, weird.
I just
Well, it
remembered
goes to
that.
the point. Sorry,
Sorry,
Stella.
Drew. You go.
It goes to the point of how many of these child stars are actually bred for a purpose, and they have these agreements in place over generations of, all right, my child's going to be a Disney star, this one's going to be a pop star, and they have them there for a reason, and they're controlling them. You always follow the money and the connections. They're all connected back to someone of prominence. And if there are any genuine artists these days, whether they're actors or musicians or traditional artists, if they do actually break through into the scene, they're very quickly co-opted and changed against what their moral compass was at the start of things. So it's just like politicians. They're not elected, they're selected, and it goes for the people that entertain us as well.
Yep, 100%. I think they sort of figure out, what each person's talent is. And I mean, they're not going to try to put somebody who's, leans towards something creative into a more business position, are they? So they sort of sort them out. But I was just thinking about that young man, well, not so young, I guess, anymore, but the Corey guy. He was starting to lift the lid off the Hollywood thing. Corey, I can't remember his last name.
Corey Feldman.
Right, right. What happened to him? Because he kind of came and went. He sort of disappeared, didn't he?
No. He's still out there talking about the slavery in Hollywood and kids being molested. And
Oh, he still is. Okay.
Yeah.
You just know he was touched up by Tom Hanks on the Burbs set for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Because his other friend, the other Corey.
Haim.
And Corey
unaliving
Haim was
himself.
raped by
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
When he was 11.
Yeah.
And also just chucking in that, I don't know if any of you remember Dionne Warwick. She was a singer. She was some relative of Dolly Parton too, I believe.
Oh, she was Whitney Houston's
Whitney Houston's
cousin or aunt or something like that.
Yeah. I think it was aunt.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, that's right. It was too. Yep.
I was gonna bring up Honey Boy, this movie Shia LaBeouf wrote, directed, and starred in. I believe he at least wrote it and starred in it. I think he directed it, but it's all about it's like an autobiographical thing of him as a child star and the abuse that he underwent, not only from the studios and directors and this and that, but like from his own father. He plays his own father. It's a gut-wrenching movie. And what is more ritualistic, child abuse than this system of taking advantage of kids and turning them into sensations, but like via like controlling their every move. And even as babies, right? Actor babies, it's like if you need the baby to cry, what do? You pinch it on the arm until it starts crying.
Well, there's reference to that sort of thing in David Bowie's song Cracked Actor, basically saying that anyone who's an actor is basically pre-broke. You don't get into Hollywood by having a solid family, a good upbringing, et cetera, et cetera.
I saw something recently about this trend on TikTok where it's like parents playing pranks on their children for the sake of like a TikTok video. But a lot of these pranks are kind of cruel and like make the children afraid or like feel unsafe in some way or feel betrayed. And it's just kind of gross. Like, anybody that laughs at like a child who's terrified, even if only momentarily, right? It's kind of a sick way to get views and likes. And I don't know, like, I think about Halloween as a ritual, as a holiday in our culture, and how, it's like a day where kids traditionally would scare each other or engage in things that scare them like voluntarily. But is that really a good thing to like terrify our children when what they need on a psychological level is to feel protected and loved?
So I don't think that it's a good thing overall, but you got to think about the fact that maybe if these people are doing it to their children for likes on the internet, their children will be less susceptible to other things, other forms of abuse later on by people who actually are going to hurt them or use them. I
So
don't know if that's a good thing, but it's, it's still there.
Learn not to trust people by not trusting your parents at a very young age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere.
It's always ritual abuse. That's always where it seems to end up.
Well, and it just seems like anybody that speaks out against the abuse gets canceled, you know?
But that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
Corey Feldman's such a strange one, because he hasn't stopped talking about it. He's been on Good Morning America, been on that many shows, and people just dismiss him as crazy. Like, if in a world of the Me Too movement, he's actually talking about people who abused him, he's not getting any traction. And that in itself is pretty damning of how much the system is built around protecting these people.
I think the people that abused him were so powerful that, I mean, they're untouchable. So I don't think he's any threat, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, right?
He would have ended up like his friend. Like, he would have ended up, like his friend if they wanted him. Now, here's the thing about, right, the way he does things is he's like, oh, I'm gonna give you this the real scoop on all this stuff. Just give me some more money. And so he's been kind of exploiting that aspect of himself. And I mean, in a way, you know, like if he's trying to make some money, then, you know, in a way, this story does need to get out there, and it's compelling and everything. But it's not like it's dirty. You know what I mean? If you're just trying to make a buck off of your tragic story, there's some dirtiness to it. You should just be exposing the bad guys, obviously.
Yeah, he's a little more curated than you would expect, right?
They program you.
So he's programmed as far as I can tell. Part of the plan.
Well, that's all I had. I'm going to open the floor if anybody wants to throw another subject out there, or if you have any thoughts on anything we've covered tonight. As usual, there seems to be a kind of thread throughout, but yeah, anybody have anything for us?
I vote you put that link up that Ashley posted in the chat just a second ago, because it's worth a look. Sort of. It's pretty gross, but you know,
All right,
woke a few
graphic
people up.
graphic warning here. Is that?
No, just in a gross way.
All right, so
it's just disappointing to be a human when you see this shit.
Symbolic
She looks like
pics
Madonna.
for the month of 5/23. So
Looks
this is
almost as bad.
And
Okay, so
Joker
we got
mixed together.
Dolly Parton here.
Yeah, so this is the Vigilant Citizen, and what they do is try to kind of expose some of the stuff that we talk about here. And they will do symbolic picks of the month where they find in music and Hollywood not even all, samplings of the satanic, they call this the gender bending agenda. And they will put these examples into this scroll format so you can see, and it oftentimes will show the celebrities, like a handful every time, with the one-eyed symbolism. And then sadly though, in this case, it's Dolly and a butterfly eye patch for that symbolism, which is even more disturbing.
Well, okay, so here's another one with her, and it's a star. Is
Pentagram.
I mean, but are we convinced that these are real? Why would she have two different types of eye patch?
Usually it would be for like a magazine shoot, and
Yeah,
so they
same
may
photo
have
session.
like 4 or 5 images from that they'll be taken out.
Yep. I was
Let's
a little
explain
bit.
the one-eye thing, because
Yeah,
a lot of people
I don't know anything.
Whenever people cover their eye or wear an eye patch or show one eye, it's a symbolic gesture. You'll find it all throughout. In fact, whenever you were playing that video earlier, they showed a picture of Lil Nas X with one eye covered. There's one. So this is kind of a symbol to show that they're in the club. And
Illuminati.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Illuminati. I was a bit disappointed to see. Kylie there, but she's always been a long-term advocate for the gay community here in Australia. She's always been at the Mardi Gras, etc. So I guess it's a natural progression, really.
I guarantee there isn't a single celebrity, whether it's an actor, actress, musician, whatever. Every single one of them would have some kind of photo somewhere where they're covering an eye. I think they do it to people even in photo shoots. They suggest, just cover your eye because it's really artsy. And maybe they don't even, some blissfully ignorant and don't even know what they're doing. But for the most part, like Ando said, they're showing off that they're a part of the club.
Yeah, well, and I would say that probably in their
Oh, good. Sorry.
I was just going to say, probably in their contract, they're told to, whatever you're directed to do in any photo shoot, you just do it. Don't ask questions. Go, Rob.
Yeah, so it recently came out as to why the eye patch is significant. What the eye patch does is it allows you to maintain your night vision by having one of your eyes blocked. You can see in the
I've
dark.
heard this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly that's why pirates did it, so you could go below deck. If you were in a fight and there was fighting above deck and below deck, you could move the eye patch from one eye to the other when you changed environments.
Yes.
And isn't night vision a really good trait of a predator species that preys upon others?
Exactly. Yeah.
And seeing in the dark.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Hence the Illuminati, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It all makes
they
sense.
see what you don't, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They don't need the light to see.
Ties back to the whole breakdown, the entomology of occult, the oculus, the eye. It's all around that same kind of symbology.
Yeah. The big C.
Yes.
S-double-E.
Exactly.
Wild. Well, I lied. I do have one more clip, and just tell me what you think.
I'm just gonna say this. I heard this morning on another podcast that this variant obviously is already sweeping the UK. They're considering having all their citizens in the UK mask up again. Guys, I am begging you, if you stood down in 2020, please stand up in 2023 when this hits our shores. Because if you think you lost freedom last time, it ain't going to be nothing compared to what they're going to do this time. And if we overwhelm these idiots and let them know that we will not do this, and those of us that stood last time don't have to stand alone, then we can beat this. We can actually beat them at their game this time. So please don't be a coward this time. Don't mask your kids up. Don't go and not go to the grocery store without your mask on. Don't send your kids to school with masks on. Don't stop hugging each other. Don't stop going to church. And if your pastor shuts his doors, find a new church. If your pastor finds a way to agree with the narrative, find a new church this time. Guys, we are living in the end, and they are trying so hard to tear down our country from within. And they're doing it, and they're going to continue doing it. And the only way for us to push it back is to stand up. There are far more of us than there are of them. But they are going to work exceptionally hard, and I guarantee you, if they start pushing this in our country, it will be far worse than it was last time. Far worse than it was last time. They want 15-minute cities. They want us to stop communicating with each other. They want to censor us. They want to shut us down. We have to stand. We're already seeing it with what's going on in Hawaii. And if you think that was a natural disaster, you got another thing.
Yeah, they're trying to push it in Australia too. There's some new strain. I think it's sort of hanging around WA, Western Australia, from what I understand. It's called Eris, E-R-I-S. And backwards, that is sire.
And Eris is also an ancient god as well.
Yep. No matter which way you look at it.
Have you all ever heard of Discordianism? It's a fake religion built around the worship of Eris, the goddess of chaos. They symbolize things with the fork, and they say the word Nord and the silver apple. But yeah, I just thought it was weird because I remember that from back in the day of early, I guess I would say it was the early internet whenever this whole thing spread around. It's based off of a Robert Anton Wilson book.
Interesting that you talk about the silver apple, because there was a transhumanist techno group in 1967, I think it was, that was called the Silver Apples.
Well, the reason Eris is known or symbolized by that silver apple is because there was this bet on who the prettiest goddess was or something like that, and that was the apple that I believe the woman was named Paris, right? She won the apple, and all the goddesses got mad because a mortal won the thing, and that started the Trojan War.
Hence the saying apple of my eye, correct?
Interesting.
Stella and I had a bit of a discussion in the Telegram about this, that they're talking about there being lockdowns again and all the mandates and things coming back. But I think for this to actually happen, they can't just fear campaign through the media again. They'd actually have to drop some kind of a bioweapon that has a noticeable kill rate of, say, like 30, 40%. Because I think if they just rolled out the same thing as last time, the majority of normies, I think, I might just be a bit hopeful, but I think the majority of normies have woken up to the bullshit of just the system of lockdowns and repression that happened. I don't think they'd be willing to go for it unless there was something noticeable happening on the screens. Like, they need people dropping in the streets this time, I feel.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because most people are just going to be like, we've already done that. We're not doing that again. And they can't just do it the same way they did it last time. They can't have the hospitals actually do the dirty work because the scheme is broken. So it does seem like they'll have to start releasing more things. Like, who knows if they're going to release them on, in places where people congregate, because like the big thing right now is all these Taylor Swift concerts, which are also an occultic ritual we can talk about some other time.
I was going to say, do you think that they're going to release them, or do you think they already have? Because, I mean, a lot of the world has already taken some stuff that we don't know all of the answers to.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to be, like, if you look at that PDF that I posted earlier and all the direct energy weapons, it's quite possible they could be triggering something through that by the people who've taken things in the past. Who knows? I mean, it's all very detailed, the way they go into, from really, really early, back in the 50s, 60s, they're already figuring out that, certain waves married with other waves will do certain things. And I mean, here we are in, 2020. So it's possible.
And didn't Bill Gates say this next time will get their attention?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and if I was some kind of a Bond-esque villain, I would release a virus that deliberately targets the unvaccinated, air quotes, scares the shit out of them to the point that they get the ability to literally force needles in arms. And then they go, see, the vaccines were a great thing. These people who didn't vaccinate the first time, now they're really sick. And then they'll literally go door to door and get the people they missed in the last round.
I hope you're wrong. Stand strong. Hold the line. Do not comply.
Singing in the
here's
rain, just
the
singing
other
in
thing.
the rain. There you go. Look at this. If you need things. Everybody needs this. Look at, see that? Can you see that?
No,
No,
can't
I
see it,
can't.
Rob. You're like all green screened out and shit.
Tannerite.
Tannerite.
I've got a
Hilarious.
special door for you federal guys. It's one that goes boom. Hit it harder. I love it.
The poor postman that knocks on the door.
Is he using a battering ram or some shit, or a shotgun? No.
He could be having
it'll
an off day.
fine.
You never know.
Well, my postal carrier just steals my mail, so it doesn't even matter. Whatever.
Damn.
I saw I saw a postal carrier on an electric scooter delivering the mail, and I was like, what is this world coming to? You can't walk door to door. It's like right downtown, man. I'm like, it's like 10 feet from one door to the other. I couldn't believe it.
At least you get your mail. So
Wally approaches, man. I'm saying.
So like a morbidly obese guy on one of those rascal scooters, not like an electric scooter.
No, well, it was one step away. He wasn't obese yet, but he's gonna be.
When they die, you know what you want to do is you take those little wheelchairs from them and you bring them to me, or you buy the kit from me so that you can use them as like security devices, chase people with them.
A freaking turret, automated robot turret.
Yes.
That's my guy. That's my guy.
Doombots from Rob.
Doombot.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was checking into a shipper the other day, and the guy says, "Oh, did you hear that that COVID's coming back?" And I'm like, "It's gonna keep coming back if we let it." And that is the thing. Everybody out there in the world that are listening to this, you already know. You already know. Don't let this happen. Don't let them lock anything down. Don't put on the mask, even if it's like you can't go somewhere or you can't go to this or that without wearing the mask. I absolutely refuse the mask. Make a scene if you have to. If enough people do that, then they won't even get to do this effort unless they take the backup plan that Drew just talked about, which I really hope they don't, because I don't know if they could. They might have put some sort of immunity to whatever they release next in their shots. That sounds really interesting. But they also could just have everybody that they already laid the infrastructure into. They could just turn on the 5G, 6G, 7G, and make them buzz out.
Yeah, I think either way, they're going to drop a lot of people all at once just to collectively scare the shit out of society so that they comply even harder than last time. Like America relatively got away scot-free with COVID in comparison to the rest of the West. So America's well and truly due for what they want to achieve. The rest of the Western world pretty much walked along in lockstep, so I think it'd be easier for them in like the likes of Canada and New Zealand and Australia. But I think they really want to get around to the people in America they didn't get to the first shot.
Well, we'd have a Second Amendment. A lot of those places don't. So that's one of the reasons why they're a lot more careful here whenever they.
There's some motherfuckers that you come at them with a needle and they're gonna pull their pistol. I mean,
The Supreme
that's just how it
Court
is.
has already codified and reinforced the Second Amendment in the last few weeks over and over again, to the point that the ATF is almost nullified at this point. But we're going to see, last time what they tried to do here in New Mexico is they tried to say that, because of COVID, they couldn't sell guns or ammo because apparently COVID is ballistic. Who knew?
Stock up on primers and brass, even
Air
if you don't
guns.
have or air gun. Yeah,
Dude, the
I just-
45 caliber air guns are amazing, and now they got tannerite loaded exploding pellets that are just
Hilarious.
taking shit out. It's great. Oh, I love
bought
technology.
I bought me a fucking crossbow, brother. I got to stock up on some tips and whatnot, but just shot it for the first time today, and it's sick. I'm fairly deadly out to about 80 yards.
Very nice. Very nice.
I deliberately have hunting rifles that use NATO rounds, just in case.
That's a start. Get an air gun. That's going to be the next step. I'm telling you, I think they're going to take over, especially for urban combat. Just as an aside, I'm working on a new assault air rifle that is all electric. You can control the rounds per second, the feet per second. It has a built-in rangefinder so that you don't waste air in a small combat zone. Like say if you're in a house doing house clearings, you don't need 1,200 feet per second to drop people in that situation. So it automatically throttles back the feet per second, the whole 9 yards. It's going to be badass. So
unreal. Can you make me one for squirrels, please?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that would work, but again, I just want something that a Terminator that patrols the garden and just kills the motherfuckers. No mercy.
They have one. They have one already. You could buy it. So.
Yeah. Well, anybody have anything else for us?
Trevor
What are we
Green.
at right now? 229. Okay.
I know you have something. You
Oh,
wanted
yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That was the whole point of me coming on to the show, actually. So I have a kind of a side project that I'm looking at starting up. There's a couple people out there who are doing things that are similar, putting out a, monthly or weekly report of just like kind of breaking down news, kind of an intel wrap up for whatever region that they're in. And just anybody who happens to be listening, or if any of you know someone who you think might be interested in, participating, I'd love to have different people from different walks of life in different regions who are just willing to kind of pay attention to the news and the events that aren't getting reported nationally or internationally, and then put those into a small report, no editorializing, just X happened on X day. So that way we can I think it'd be a good idea to start sharing that across the different groups through different regions, because there's stuff that we're not everybody's seeing because it gets lost in the noise of the Biden, the Ukraine, all the nonsense that's going on out there. And everybody pays attention to that because it's fancy, but the stuff that's happening locally is the stuff you need to worry about. And if you're not aware of it, and if you're not aware that, the small tyranny happening here is also happening in the Northeast or in this tiny part of Australia, then you kind of start to miss some of the other pictures and some of the other plans that they might have going on.
I like it. Almost like a decentralized newspaper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or newsletter, if you will, whatever you want to call it, zine. But yeah, man, you can't. There is no good national coverage of like the on the ground, like regular kind of people shit. I recommend everybody, at least if you live near a city or anywhere for that matter, download Citizen, the Citizen app. You get all the police and fire kind of stuff. And sometimes it's good to know, like if it's nearby, it'll alert you if something's going down. You never know.
Yeah, well, in Australia, all the little communities would have sort of their own newspaper, little newspapers with just local, very local ground level sort of stories. And a few years ago, Rupert Murdoch came through and pretty much bought all of those out. So there's very few community papers, and the ones that are existing, I don't know if 100% of them got bought out, or I think there's been a couple pop up since, but yeah, a lot of the local things are kind of, you can see the agenda in the background there, sort of getting more and more. Would you say that's right, Drew? Like, did that happen down there as well? I think it happened Australia wide.
In a few areas, ours is still up and running. We've still got the local express, but more so they're phasing out the physical copies of it. It's going all digital, so.
Yeah, okay, so it's very easily editable. Would you say that it's still the same as it always has been?
Yeah, it's like local news and media is just the same as state and federal level. It's just the same BS being pushed.
Right, okay. Yeah. Yeah, anyone else?
I was going to say, maybe about time to wrap her up. I don't know. Calling once, calling twice.
We'll do the MK Oprah story some other time.
Did we not thoroughly cover Oprah? I'm confused. Yeah,
I actually have a story from 1983 when I lived with Irene Hughes, which was literally in Crete, Illinois, right down the street from Oprah's then compound. She had a heliport basically set up on there and everything. And me and my stepbrother snuck out at about 11 o'clock, day after Christmas, 1983, and decided we were going to sneak out and walk to a friend's house, and started walking, and got chased by people in trucks with machetes and wearing robes, just like in Eyes Wide Shut, and ran off into the woods, tried to pop out in another area where there was a road so we can get back on a road and try and swing around the back to go home, and ended up, they caught us on the other side. They were waiting for us, and there was only one way to go, and that was to go slightly southeast, and then we jumped the fence and ended up on Oprah's property. I shit you not. Didn't see Oprah there, but after pandemonium ensued, I stabbed a guy because I had, of course, we're walking late at night, so I have a kitchen knife, stabbed a guy to get away, managed to escape, and the next day, we pretty much figured out who the guy stabbed was based on, him coming to our house. So that was interesting. Along the way, we built a wall of pumpkins from our other neighbor who was a dick. And we literally built a pyramid of pumpkins and blocked his entire drive. And then we did the same thing on the road going outbound because there's only one way in, one way out. And so we made this gigantic pyramid of pumpkins, and then we lit them. So they were all pretty and, had a little candle in each one. We moved about 400 pumpkins that night. But yeah, we got chased. We got chased for quite a while. And it seemed like they were trying to funnel us through that one property. Every time we tried to break off from there, somehow a truck or a carload of people or something would just pop up and start chasing us. And it was these weirdos in the Harlequin masks and the robes. And there was all kinds of weird ceremonies and shit going on at the compound when we were running through it, and we were being chased by some of the people.
Are you totally sure? Are you totally
Sounds like
sure?
I'll get you to a kill point.
Was it the acid though? That's my question.
We were 13, dude. If we could afford acid, we would have done something way cooler with that, So,
wow.
Yeah, it was something else. And then my mom ends up, she's like, "Where did you go?" I'm like, "Well, here's where we went." I had to go show her, right? And show her, me and my stepbrother show her where we cut through, etc. And she's like, "Over there, where all the fires were? That's where you were?" We're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh shit." And sure enough, shortly after that, we were asked by Irene Hughes, who's a famous psychic, right? Was the psychic that predicted JFK's assassination. We were asked to leave about maybe a couple months later. So something's going on there. Bunch of naked people chasing us. Didn't make sense. 13, we don't know what the hell's going on. Just running away from maniacs,
Oprah was probably busy eating a baby in the background.
It wouldn't surprise me. She's probably in the basement, getting first dibs. I get all the tenders. I got the tenders.
It's a pretty wild fucking story, Rob. It's kind of like I know a couple of folks who tell me stories and I'm just like, really? Like, no way. But then I just decide, like, no, this is one of these people that just has some wild stories, man. I don't
see
doubt
Oprah running all the time. She would run with a black SUV, down her street. Black SUV in front of her, one behind her, and then two bodyguards on either side.
When did she like break out and start making mad buku bucks?
It was about that time, about maybe 84, 85, somewhere in there. So this was right as she was getting big. She wasn't massive, but she was big.
So I guess Dr. Phil must come into it along the way somewhere too then.
Yeah.
I would
know what
not
the
be
deal is with him.
surprised.
You know,
I never trusted Dr. Oz personally. I don't.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
neither
He's-
him.
no.
He was full of shit.
Yeah.
So you know, here's another thing. So in the Maui, so we used to have a lot of kids missing in the Crete area in Illinois back then, because remember that was when the satanic panic started to kick in, right? Right about 83, 84 is when all this satanic shit started kicking off. And it's funny because when she left, I was told that a lot of those incidences just went away. So I don't know, something to it maybe. And then let's talk about the tunnels underneath Lahaina, right? A lot of volcanic tunnels, right? Kids go in them all the time. Well, last few years, kids have been told to stay out of those. What's going on? Why are they suddenly be told they can't go explore these caves that people have explored for 100, maybe 500 years?
It's for their health and safety.
Explicitly, yeah, stay out of them. You know,
I saw this map at one point. I can't claim to know if it's real or not, but it was like the distribution of cave networks and systems in the United States, and then next to it was the distribution of missing children, and you know there was kind of a correlation.
And Bigfoot sightings, they overlap to that as well.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, New Mexico's huge on that. Go figure. We got Zorro Ranch here. Nothing to see.
I've been in some caves. I never saw any like pedophiles or big feet.
How old were you?
Know,
and were you with an adult?
Yeah, as an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little different.
But
You're
it
just
was
wishing somebody come rape you.
It was
Stop
only
lying.
one. It was one cave. You know, I don't know. I haven't explored much, but yeah, I don't know, man. Again, some of this shit that I see out there, I just am like, okay, information received 50-50 on if it actually has any authenticity. I don't know. Some people are just, that's the thing with like meme culture. Like make a meme that people share. It doesn't matter if it's true or not necessarily. We're almost, it's not just government propaganda and lies. There's a lot of bullshit from just random trolls too, right?
I've just put a link in the chat there, which might be a fun little thing to watch as we're closing off. It was just sparked me when he's talking about the satanic panic. It was 2021, ABC in Australia, and the news is going on. And just all of a sudden, let's play the video.
Good old ABC. Jeez,
Yeah.
Mag that is.
Right here?
They're calling to... Can you make it any bigger?
Yep.
They're calling to defund the ABC at the moment. Anyway, let's watch this.
And Parliament. The state government announced the proposed legislation today. It's in part due to the stabbing of a police dog during an arrest in Brisbane last year.
Can't hear the vocals hardly, but there you go.
Recent outages have shown how just one...
That's because the vocals weren't, like the audio cut out. There was some sort of technical problem in air quotes.
Oh, is that
the
what that
audio?
was?
Yeah, so it's like the audio sort of got forgotten in that bit, and then suddenly it cuts to. Yeah,
It
so just
cuts to
watch.
this.
Let's watch this again.
They got some Satan shit going on. Bing bang boom. What the hell?
Somebody grabbed the wrong VCR tape.
Well, it's live.
And here we are talking about the police animals.
La, la, la.
No, oh my God, we're killing the animals right here. Sacrifice.
Quick, get the
Look
Prime
at the
Minister
girl on
out of
the
there.
Keyboard. Right. Look at the chick on the keyboard. She's loving life there.
Is this there's well, geez, I don't know. There's no way this is just somebody made it for the fucking shits and giggles and put it on YouTube. Like, when did this?
Oh no, this actually happened.
No,
this happened.
This was live on TV.
Really?
live.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you
crap.
So that must have been happening in the ABC studios or something, or else maybe it was a hack. But I don't know.
I
Looked
dare
pretty
say it was in the studio right next to where the news is being presented, and that's
I
what
reckon.
give to each other on a
Look at
different
this.
channel.
Look at
She
her
looks like an
face.
MK. I know she looks like totally MK
She
Ultra.
looks ultra big time.
Yep.
Hey.
Yep.
What does she say? What does she say? Like,
Wow.
She just ignores it.
Oh my God.
Recent outages have shown how just one Queensland.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Just go back a little bit so that so that you can go into it. She's just and put it full screen if you possibly can. Sorry.
Whoops.
Don't mean to be bossy.
No, you're good. He even says Satan.
Yeah,
You
he
hear
says
that?
hail.
Yeah, he says hail
There you go.
Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
So, yeah, just so people understand what happened there, because a lot of this is visual, and we do have people that listen to audio only. There's news, and the audio wasn't there. They were supposed to go live to these people, and at that segment, they go live to another room where they're conducting a satanic ritual complete with inverted pentagram, inverted cross, and the person in the robe declares its allegiance to Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it cut from they were
He does
actually
the
police.
horns, too.
These
He does
guys
the
are
rock and
police.
roll horns.
Yeah.
Well,
Who
okay.
knows?
They're covering a new law that proposes prison for hurting police animals. I mean, it just whatever. It seems kind of irrelevant.
But
It just-
the interesting thing is this came about because of a stabbing of a dog, but just prior to it, during the COVID lockdown protests, the police rode horses directly into the protesters, trampling them, and one person tried to push a horse away, and they tried to gaslight that guy's punching the horse.
Wow.
I remember that.
No shit.
I remember seeing
Yeah.
that.
That was
They
totally a
did that in
setup, by the
Canada.
way. That
They
was a
did that in
total
Canada too, if you remember. Same incident.
Right, yes, they did, that's right.
So, did anybody ever identify these people?
Nope.
Or?
No, it just went away under the rug somewhere.
It's just your friendly neighborhood satanic panic thing going on here. Nothing to see. Just, pet the doggies. Don't stab them no more, okay?
Yeah, what are you
Maybe
picking
we'll
on the
have
Satanists now, are you?
Yeah.
There might be an American one in the future where it cuts to the View, and then Oprah's on there with the View eating a baby, just live on television, and they cut away
I could
and
see
don't
it.
acknowledge it.
But you know what? If she does it
Cut into
right,
Channel
you'll
10.
like it. You'll actually like it if she eats you right. See? That's how they do it. Yeah. You're just a bigot.
So this says the footage might have come from a Facebook video of the Noosa Temple of Satan, a satanic group based in Queensland, Australia. The same clip is seen at the 18-minute mark of the group's live stream from October 30th. So somebody, I mean, it's like it was queued up right where the guy says, "Hail Satan."
Hail Satan.
Right.
So like somebody was pulling a gag here or something.
Well, the fact that she didn't react or anything is just so sus as hell, because otherwise, I mean, she would say something like, "Oh, we apologize for that. There must have been a technical problem," or something. But she's just like in this trance, and then she starts talking like nothing ever happened. It was
Maybe
really
it was
weird.
just deer in the
We were talking
headlights.
about that. She looks programmed, right?
Yeah, very much so. Very much. Yeah, there's a few.
Way to get through a flub, like a flub, and just continue to roll on as if it didn't happen. The best way.
Yeah, I
So-
guess.
Apparently, these people are advocating for Satanism to be taught in schools, which is,
Yeah.
hey, that's a goal,
Typical Queenslanders. This is a message for Wade, one of my listeners. Clean your state up, mate. Get rid of 'em.
There's quite a few churches of Satan around. It's one
I need to
far
prove
from
that
me,
I'm
I believe.
smarter than everybody, so I'm just going to become an atheist. I don't know what I'm talking about.
You're not really smart if you're satanic, right? You kind of smart, but you really need to be an atheist. Yeah.
This is a funny little story. I chalk it up to somebody pulling a gag, but it's kind of funny. Who the fuck knows?
Certainly
Isn't it funny
interesting.
that the community-led Satanists are always like the weirdo geeks that you could picture being the ones that played Dungeons and Dragons and took it too far?
Oh yeah.
Well, we were
And
talking
then the
about
real
Order of
Satanists
Nine
are in the
Angles.
background with
Yeah.
real blood and shit.
Order of Nine Angles, right? Anybody know where that came from?
Nope.
Warhammer and Dungeons and
it's-
Dragons.
Yeah, Warhammer, it's the Chaos Gods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
a
like
nerd. Like
super nerd.
Super nerd. Big time. Well, yeah, that video didn't strike me as the eyes wide shut Satanists. It struck me as the Warhammer.
The War Dungeons and
Just
Dragons Satanists.
Yeah.
I think they were just having a quick satanic session in the lunch break. It's probably the canteen.
We're just making lunch here. Nothing to see. A little bit of
Well,
satanic lunch.
they were just saying
It's fine.
grace before having a meal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
They hail Satan and they go off to their protests for Black Lives Matter. And
Yeah, right.
Well, that was August 20th, 2021. So I don't know if anybody's up on sort of dates and numerology and stuff, but it might have some significance. I'm not sure. Haven't looked into it.
Almost
It's
2
almost
years
like a-
today, right?
Ooh. It's 2 years today for you, isn't it? Yeah, it's 21st here
Oh, yeah.
of August. Oh, interesting. That's weird.
Of all the time you would have pulled that
Not
up.
planned.
Go figure.
Not
Hello, you
planned.
just gave it power.
Lie.
Great.
I think there's a Jew. There's a Jew pointing at my office. Shit.
By the way, y'all, this is the holiday. If you didn't know, it's the great Ron Paul's 88th birthday.
That's right.
88,
cool.
really?
Nice.
88. Okay.
There you go.
Ashley.
The good doctor.
Oh, yeah, that is
88.
weird.
Yes.
Rob, you just happen to have that T-shirt. That's
It happens.
The synchronicity
It happens,
abounds. Look at that.
Because the Maui fire started on the 8th of the 8th.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, yeah. Happy birthday, Ron Paul. Doctor, I told you so.
Big time. Yeah.
Yep. He tried to tell us.
Yeah. Well, God bless him. All right. Well, what do you say, y'all? Should we call it a night? Go around the circle, make our final plugs. Any final thoughts? Feel free. I'm Mike the Polymath, Easy Peasy Podcast. And I will pass it upwards to Brandon, aka Trevor Green? I'm not familiar
Trevor
with this
Green.
guy. Yeah.
I'm Cinnamon Chili Nationalist on Twitter, and a couple of you guys know me from other places. So,
Yep. Chili bound, as always.
I am Ashley, Think Change Repeat from the Union of the Unknowns. You can find me at Union Unknowns on the app formerly known as Twitter. Drew?
Oh, sorry. Drew Misson from Your Missing the Point podcast, MISSEN. Also on a podcast called Conspiracy Theater 3000, where we break down classic Hollywood films for symbolism and the occult.
Stella Q, you can find me sometimes with him and sometimes with her. Same places, won't repeat. And occasionally with Brad Binkley on the Propaganda Report. Ando.
I just want to mention before we move along too far that everyone should pray for Phytophiliac's husband. I don't know why he's in the hospital, but
Yeah.
if he's been there and she's there still, that's pretty serious. Sounds like it sounds like he's improving too. But any help for that, and also mention that Phytophiliac makes music, and you can find it on which one is it? Is it? She's not on
Bandcamp. Oh, isn't she? I
No,
think she is.
She's on SoundCloud. Oh, she just got back to Bandcamp.
I think she went back on, yeah.
I guess they stopped doing the PayPal thing because that was the issue. She had to get off of PayPal because if y'all remember correctly, PayPal had that crazy thing where they were trying to find people for doing shows like this one. So
yeah, holding your money, all that nonsense. Yeah.
But yeah,
Good music.
Phytophiliac music. She makes it herself, and it's awesome. Fun. And I do a show called Burn Babylon Burn, and the Doom Kitchen I haven't put out very much lately, but I'm trying to. I just did one with Drew and Stella that came out this week. It was really fun. We did Drew. It's the Conspiracy Christian Coalition.
Christian Conspiracy Coalition, yeah. It's a round table. Christians get together to discuss conspiracy.
Yeah, good fun.
Is it like this really with awesome. Less? Is it like this with less cursing?
Oh, it's an Australian conspiracy show, so it's pretty balanced with the swearing and the scripture.
So yeah, check that out. libertylinks.io/the Doom Kitchen or the Doom Kitchen at protonmail.com, and I send it over to Rob from the Black Lab.
Hey, this is Rob here from Black Labs, and I am not even doing any of this stuff very much because I've decided I want to change my format. So if you've noticed, I've got the VGA suite running in the background here, and I'm basically revamping everything. I'm going to go full MK Ultra. I'm going to try and hypnotize my victims with Arena. And until I can get the $1,500 to pay for the damn thing, I'm probably going to wait out. I'm actually in the process of learning it right now, so you see me toying with it here and there. And but you could still find my show, Black Labs Podcast, on Spotify. Pretty much that's the only one I do now. I think I was an Apple, but I think they threw me off, like Glenn Beck. I'm just not that cool, though, so I don't make the same amount of money he does either. So there's that. And if you can find me, don't, because I'm not on any social media. You need to message me and shit. I'm off of all of that. All of that.
Everybody thinks I'm high, and I am.
And that's the end of that.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, y'all. This has been yet again a great WTF Forum. We'll catch you next time, perhaps next week. If there's still shit making us say what the fuck, which I imagine there will be. Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Amen.
Love
Bye.
you guys.
Adios, what the fuckers.
Stay, guys.